I'll call the meeting of the land use plan to order. Roll call, Vicki Myers, Mark Fleischhauer,
Here.
Tracy Thomas,
Here.
Greg Shoup,
Here.
Bob Hunter,
Here.
Woody Tyner,
Here.
Pete Powers,
Here.
Ann Arnold,
Here.
Kathy Gaines,
Here.
and White.
Here.
Didn't see you. Great. Okay, minutes of the October 23rd meeting. So everybody got a copy of that in their packet, right? Are there any changes, corrections, additions, deletions? No? I had one. Greg Shoup is listed as absent and shows up later in the minutes, so I'm thinking that maybe he should...
Yes, he was here.
I'll tell him.
Okay, I didn't even see her not sitting there.
I saw that and I thought maybe you just had to put it when he came in or something.
My only concern is that a lot
When
of
you
times
just look
when
at the
go back
minutes, you would see that he wasn't there, and I thought,
Yeah.
oh, he was there.
What time did you arrive? 2:04.
She's right here at the top of the second page, so we hadn't done very much.
I got it.
Okay. If there are no changes, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Then the minutes are approved as amended. Okay, land use plan, chapter 3. Wes.
Thank you, Vicki. Thank you all for coming today. I wanted to, some of you mentioned, this is Justin Brantley. He's one of our interns. We have a revolving row of interns from UNCW's Masters of Public Administration program. So from time to time, we'll let them out of the cave and bring them along to see what happens outside of the office. See if they actually really want to pursue a career that involves land use planning. But so in any case, Justin's here today. He's going to be taking some notes, and so that's that. Quickly, this will work. Okay, for today. I have. We're going to talk about these various items. We have a draft vision statement that we'll just briefly discuss, and I'm not suggesting that it is the final, but it potentially is a starting point for us getting closer. And we'll talk about the community survey update. Public input meeting time and location, and then we'll review chapter 3. Hopefully we'll spend most of our time reviewing that. Trust everyone has had a chance to read that material. Okay, great. Today you'll be given chapter 4, community facilities and services, at the closure of the meeting, and then we'll just end with any questions that you all have. Anything before we get started? Okay, great. So, I'll just, you all can read this. I'll read it out loud as well, regarding your vision statement. And you, and Vicki, you rightfully, is that page 1-5 on the
1-5, right.
1-5. So you can look at page 1-5 for comparison. But the next stab at this goes as follows. Holden Beach utilizes its available resources to be an inclusive, family-oriented residential community that strives to protect and sustain its natural resources and recreational beaches for current and future generations. At the last meeting, we discussed that perhaps our current vision statement, sort of in terms of its theme, wanted to say what we felt like it should say, but it was maybe a little bit too lengthy, a little bit too wordy, and so if we could possibly try to pare it down a bit. This is my first attempt at doing that. If there's any questions or thoughts about it, I'd be open to hearing those.
Can you distribute that to us
Sure.
so that we can all give it some thought?
Yep, that's what we'll do. And you all will get this PowerPoint You all have been sent the PowerPoints, correct? Okay. We'll ensure that that's.
And you gonna get rid of that black background, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
we'll send it as as a black and white. The in PowerPoint you can print it so it prints black and white, but when it's a PDF, yes, it's much more difficult to do so.
Yes.
All right. So community survey update. We closed the community survey. You all were distributed material regarding that community survey. We feel very positive about the number of responses we received, almost 900 responses. This is also given in between when we had a major hurricane hit the coast of North Carolina. So, almost 900 responses I think is very favorable to the community. It also shows that certainly folks are interested in participating in their local government. And then lastly, I'll add that the vast number of responses were all from property owners, slightly more from second property owners than for permanent residents. And then you only had a small number of non-resident responses, just around 81 or so. Everyone did receive the material that showed the difference between the property owner and the non-property owner responses. Overall, the responses were, we talked about where we were last time when we had about 600 responses. There wasn't any notable change, but I will point out I've got a couple summary slides about the difference between the property owners and the non-property owners. Point at that one? Yeah. Okay. So I think it's probably did not come as a surprise to most of you the difference between the results. Non-property owners, and there weren't that many, frankly. Non-property owners were more interested in parking availability as more of a transportation issue compared to property owners. I don't think this comes as much of a surprise to folks. Of course, if you don't live on the island, you're more interested in being able to try to find a parking spot. Property owners identified the lack of facilities for bikes and pedestrians as one of the most important transportation issues. Non-property owners did not. Non-property owners identified beach access and parking as more of a growth and development issue compared to property owners, meaning that they are more interested in having more beach access and parking. Again, that doesn't come as much of a surprise to me, and would generally support the notion that the survey is probably right in the folks that are taking it. Both groups agreed that roadway drainage and maintenance of existing roads are two of the most important transportation issues. Roadway drainage is a problem at most of our beach communities on the coast. Non-property owners identified creating, again, more public parking as the most important way to create additional recreational opportunities. This was different than our property owner response. And then overall, non-property owners were more concerned with public parking availability and public beach access overall. Those are really the primary differences in terms of usage of the land use and development. Non-property owners are still interested in it being a single-family, low-density type beach. It was mainly those two items related to beach access and parking. We can talk more about these Okay, we can talk more about the survey, but I think we've sort of talked about it a fair amount. The town has received. We have all the open-ended responses that can be distributed as need be.
I believe we all received that, correct? Mm-hmm. The Excel sheet?
Mm-hmm. Okay. When you are given Chapter 1, there will be a breakdown of each of these questions to complete Chapter 1. You've already been given it, but the survey was not done at that point in time. So that'll be in your material when we're giving you the final draft plan.
How will you present that? Will that be broken out by property owners, non-property owners, total? What are you expecting? It will be,
so it will show the question similar, and it will show the total response. If there is a difference in that question, non-property owners felt like this was more important, it'll be noted in the narrative, rather than having 2 graphs for each question. Does that make sense? Sort of similar to how you guys were given.
It does, except I feel like you don't. I feel like you're emphasizing what the non-property owners are saying, like just in this summary, and I think it would be more important to say that property owners, like what is the emphasis on property owners as their biggest concern?
Yeah, especially since we only had 81 responses of non-island residents or property owners. You know what I'm saying? So you're giving 81 people more or equal
Sure.
treatment compared to the remainder. And I do feel like it's a Holden Beach land use plan. It's
Sure.
our land use plan. And I appreciate we have people who live nearby who want to give input, but
Well, we don't have to, it will be written as a total. The property owners are the majority of the respondents. When you do not filter them by property or non-property owner, all the responses tailor towards what the property owners wanted. And so the summary of each question will be written, survey respondents felt X, Y, Z. And then if there is, we don't have to add this. And again, it may be best that we draft the material. If you guys are not satisfied with the way it's drafted, then we go and change it. But I think you do make an important point. The only mention of the non-property owners will be a 1-sentence blurb just to say non-property owners felt X, Y, Z.
So if it's not I would only say that like if it changes if somehow they change what the majority is, which I don't think they did going through it. I don't think
They
we
don't.
need to even talk about it then.
Okay.
I don't think I want to emphasize what
That's
they're
fine.
interested in if it's not the majority of the respondents.
But I do
And I
think,
do think,
I do think that including them shows that they were surveyed and
Yes.
were part of the information.
Right.
And so I think that's a valid thing that they've been included in the plan, that we didn't ignore the fact that there are people who come to this island who don't live here.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I agree it doesn't need to be equal, but we do have a lot of visitors, and I think you need to give some weight to what their concerns are, because if you own a house here, your concerns are a whole lot different. You don't worry about parking.
exactly.
If
but
you-
the survey will reflect that. If they had a majority, then it would reflect that, and I don't think it does because they don't have a majority.
Well,
if you
I
look at
think-
the numbers.
Solicitation-wise, though, this was a biased solicitation because property owners are much more likely to respond
Yeah.
than non-property owners. I would
As
argue
they
that many
should.
of them don't even have internet or anything that would enable them to respond. I
The
think
non-property
that
owners.
the fact that we have some input, I think it can be mentioned as part, not that we have to. I mean, it's obviously an ongoing topic. We've been now bounced back for a second time to form a parking committee.
And the beach is
So to
public.
imply that there's no parking issues around here is sort of defiance of our existing.
Well, and Ann just made a very good point, too. The beach is part of the public land trust.
Yes,
you know?
it is.
So y'all just completely ignoring anybody who doesn't live on this island.
It's
Think you
kind of
do it.
making a statement we don't want them, but, you know,
But we're not ignoring
In
them. We
charge.
allowed them to be into the survey, and so, I mean, this is a Holden Beach land use. It's the property owners that are paying for whatever we decide we're doing. So they can have some opinion, but really it's the property owners that are paying for it. And so the property owners have stated what their issues are, and that's what we should be incorporating in our land use plan.
I know, but a two-sentence statement that say of the 9% of the survey
Oh, I'm
respondents who
fine
are
with that.
non-residents
Oh, I'm fine with
are
that.
agreeing with
That's
I'm
parking.
just saying, every question, you don't say, well, the property
no,
owners
I'm-
want, the
okay,
non-property
I-
owners this,
I
the
thought we
non-property
were-
owners that, the non-property, I did, every question I thought
Okay,
you were
I
gonna
just
say
thought you
what
wanted
they
to
want.
squelch-
No,
okay,
not at
okay.
all. I mean,
Okay.
putting those numbers that you showed in the beginning is totally fine. I'm fine with that. I just didn't want every
Okay.
question for you to emphasize what the non-property owners wanted compared to the property owners.
It was really just only to show if there is a divergent set of opinion, and it's only on a couple of items. But again, I think we can put something on the. If you're comfortable with it, we'll draft it, and if you're not comfortable with that material, then absolutely we'll change it to be exactly how it needs to be to be comfortable with this committee. It will not be written as though 81 respondents are
Driving
going to
the
drive
land use
policy
plan.
change
Exactly.
in the town.
No, but I was like Mark. I thought, Tracy, you were trying
No,
to
no,
discourage
no. I mean, the
Like,
first
no.
numbers where I put where this is how many residents, this was how many are full-time, that, how many non-residents, that would be totally appropriate to put in the summary.
Well, let's get a draft and then we can, when we review the draft, we'll see how to hit this.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the other piece of this too is, I mean, it was skewed to be given to property owners.
Yeah.
So you
That's
didn't
right.
get a whole lot of visitors to say what their concerns were. If we waited in the summertime and passed out the surveys that come across the bridge, it'd probably look a lot different.
Well, I think it's appropriate that it's property owners that are given the survey.
And
That's my
even,
point.
even if you did, it is hard to get folks to take these things. I'll be honest. The beach community's property owners usually respond a lot more so, but you'd be surprised. Even if you had paper copies, you'd have to hand them a $5 bill or something. They don't care. Anyways, all right. So enough about the survey. Anything else about the survey? Okay. All right. Next thing that we need to discuss is public meeting time and location. My thinking is that the public meeting will probably be here in Town Hall. Rhonda and Tim, is that? Okay. And so I wouldn't anticipate that we're going to have a huge turnout. I'm not sure historically what your turnout has been for similar public meetings.
So what's the intent of this public meeting? Because we won't be done, right? So
That's
I'm just curious as to what we're asking.
It will be just to garner additional public input.
Okay.
The committee is welcome to come, and you're welcome to participate. You guys, if we have a big group show up and you prefer to sort of listen to what they have to say, you're welcome to do that as well.
Do you just have they just sit and they voice their input? Is that what you're thinking?
So
Like
there's
a public hearing?
not necessarily. There's two ways to handle it. And this is why, I wanted to talk to this group about it. If you think we're going to have more than 30 or 40 people, that's sort of what I was thinking. Then we can have a exercise set up and fair amount of things that are more conducive to having big public groups. If not, what we will do is I will be here facilitating part of an open-ended discussion. The first part of the meeting will be discussing what a land use plan is. You guys have received some very similar to our first meeting. What a land use plan is, what it does, and then we'll also talk about some of those demographic statistics about population and so forth. And then we will break out, and I will have an easel set up and writing, concerns about. Typically, the way we handle this is we want to gather from folks what are the community's assets, what do folks feel like are issues in the community, and what do they feel like are opportunities. So those are things that can be asked. We will ask folks to just participate. We'll write the responses up on sheets, paste them on the wall. They'll have sticky backing. And to close the meeting, we'll give everyone a series of dots, 3 or 4 dots, and they can place their dots on what they believe to be the most important issues that were identified. We'll summarize those and distribute the results to you guys. They'll also be included in chapter 1.
So it's just basically another form of getting input similar to the survey, but this is people that might want to come in person.
Yep, and if they feel like they really have something important to say, lending them the opportunity to voice it in person. And so, we'll go into chapter 1. The number of respondents will be mentioned in the results. It's only 30 people, so we'll take it with a grain of salt, whatever the results are. But we've still had the opportunity for folks to come out and express any concerns that they had.
And this is a requirement for the process?
We don't have to do, you're required to do a public hearing at the closure of the, once the plan is drafted. But if this committee doesn't feel like this is going to result in anything sufficient, we certainly don't have to go through this exercise.
Well, I mean, this is a public meeting.
This is a public meeting, that's correct.
Two commissioners in the audience.
Yeah. It's typically something that we do. In some communities, it is more important than in others. So some communities you have huge turnout, and folks are really feel like they need to express something in person. Other communities, the community survey is sufficient. The committee of their peers also functions in a public capacity, and then there's also the public hearing.
I guess with the number of survey responses we got, I mean, does that kind of overwhelm what you might pick up from a public hearing?
Yeah, I kind of feel like you got the input, you got a lot of input, and then they'll have an opportunity at the end, right?
That's correct.
To also have, once we're done, and they can see what's done. But
I think this process itself inspires us to come up with ideas that, quite frankly, in a initial open session, we wouldn't have thought that. But unless we want to encourage to have an exercise like you described as part of our own process, that might have been.
The survey I've found historically is usually most successful at gathering those results. Sometimes it's just a matter of communities want to have the opportunities for folks to come out in person.
But they have this every month, opportunity to come in. And
That's correct. That's correct.
I mean, I'm not opposed to it. It just seems like it might be a waste of everyone's time.
I have a
Yours
hunch that
especially.
this group here might be the dominant at that meeting.
Might get a few more commissioners here.
In which case, we don't. I don't want to waste anyone's time. Everyone's time is precious. So there's no sense in going through the motions on this thing if this committee feels like it's not.
Well, these
gonna
Marines are
result.
burden on the town people who have full-time jobs that we take away their time, and I think we need to preserve it. That would probably have been an evening. I think you would anticipate
Yes.
that would have been an evening event. So I don't know.
Well, the 19th is the BOC meeting, so that date would be out anyway.
There you go.
Would you guys like to take a vote on this
Sure.
to eliminate?
Tim, are you sighing here? Do you have?
I think you need to have a public input meeting.
But we
Because-
will.
I was just saying.
We will be having one at the end, as required, right?
Share your
Yeah, why?
thoughts.
This is a CAMA land use plan. CAMA land use plans are mandated by the state. There's like 9 counties, I think, that have to do it. No one else has to do it. You got a public trust area that stretches from one end to the other. Those people should have an opportunity to be heard. And the people who aren't full-time residents need to have an opportunity to be heard too. They can't be here every day. By setting a meeting and setting a time, you give them a specific avenue for which to schedule to be here if they want to be here. And like I said, it's a state mandated thing. You don't have to do it, but I just think it can't be bad PR to open yourself up for public input and give them an opportunity before you get to a final stage of your land use plan. And that's just my opinion.
How would we advertise that differently?
Yeah.
It'd be similar,
Yeah.
in the newspaper, on the town website.
I agree with Tim. I think we need to have the meeting, and if people want to come, they will. And if they don't, they won't. And it could be a very short meeting.
Sure.
We don't have to stay 3 hours.
No.
If 4 people show up, we could let them say their piece and be gone.
Yes, they could have come today.
Would we allow for written input for people who can't attend from outsiders?
Sure, I mean, there will be, certainly when the draft of this is available, there'll be written
You said it
input
after.
and
No, I
comment.
meant to this meeting, if they wanted to send in a,
Sure, absolutely. I think if Tim or Rhonda received an email, they'd be, certainly would share it with you all.
I just gave my
Send a
opinion.
representative.
I just gave
I
my
mean-
opinion. Ain't got
But we are
nothing to
gonna,
make it.
we're required to do that at the end before anything is finalized, to have a public meeting and,
Public hearing.
and let them have input then, right?
And the public hearing is typically structured that it is, that is at the evening of which the plan is considered for adoption, when it's in final.
So they don't
final
really have
format.
input then, because it's the final draft.
well, they could
I mean, I've seen,
ask
I've
to
been
amend
in,
the written report.
they can ask to amend it,
I think it's
Usually,
throw some
once
mud
once
at
it gets to that point, you guys have looked it over, and you guys are an advisory committee for that reason, to ensure that you're comfortable with the material that's contained in it. But I think that's fine for us to have the meeting. You guys don't even have to attend, frankly, if you don't want to. You can come attend if you want to, but you don't have to. So don't let that be a reason
I
why.
mean,
you
I
don't-
agree with Tracy and Tim. I think you probably won't get any new information.
Yep.
But it might be a good PR thing.
I'm
That's
not
tip-
opposed to the meeting, I just think it might be a waste of time, but that's fine.
Okay.
And I say the sooner the better.
So the 19th is off the table. 7th or the 12th.
You could do it at 6 o'clock
The 12th
on
is
the
a
19th.
busy week anyway. We have planning and zoning that
At 2.
2 that afternoon, and then that's the anniversary week for the town, so a number of
Does
events.
the 7th give you
Maybe
enough
a
time
lot
to
of-
advertise?
Maybe a lot of non-residents will be in for that celebration.
The 7th should. Where do you typically advertise? And
The Star News and the Brunswick Beacon.
Does that
When-
give you
when do
enough
they-
Did
time?
you guys
Oh,
hear?
yeah.
Did
Why
you
don't we
hear
do it
one?
at 6 o'clock before the Board of Commissioners meeting?
Does an
Can
hour?
you do
That limits the time. That
We-
limits the time. Then now you've restricted.
But we were told we can't schedule any meetings on Board of Commissioner that day.
No
Meeting
more,
day,
no
yeah.
more same day meetings.
Let me text Heather and see what it said.
I move we do it on the 7th at 6 p.m.
subject to.
Okay.
I'm getting that announced in the newspaper.
February 7th.
February 7th at 6?
How about 7?
That's fine.
7th. 7th.
7.
Wow, that's,
Are we in agreement on that? Is there
Well,
consensus?
I think Rhonda was checking.
I
But,
text
yeah, well-
Heather. I'll tell you just as soon as she
Okay.
answers
Just
me.
checking.
And we can circle back to that if
Yes.
there's a.
And Woody, the reason I
Okay.
suggested 6 was because of our staff. Who
Yeah.
who have lives too, would like to go home maybe at some point.
People we can do their
I
stuff.
can tell you.
Board of
We don't have
Commissioners
lives.
is
I
the
promise you
7th.
that.
Okay, Tim, okay, I'm sorry.
Tim is
I think about you having a life, but
I know you probably do.
What?
Nothing.
So Rhonda, you're gonna let us know?
Yeah, she's fixing to answer me.
I'll be here when y'all tell me to be here.
All right.
I
So
suggest that we specifically try to broadcast this to invite in as much participation as we can, even if we don't.
and there'll be given that it's in the Star News and the Beacon.
Beacon and I'll
Yeah,
ask
we can do
Heather.
it
Okay.
all the
advertise it.
HBPOA members and send an email
And
to
No,
give you
I'll
a
ask
draft.
Heather.
They're
Absolutely.
running, their property owners.
And it's always, all of our meetings are posted out front in front of our,
I said their property owners, we want people from everywhere.
Including property owners. I mean, it's good to send them that also.
Yeah, not just them, I mean.
You want to draft something for me to send out, or you may just
Um,
announce it?
you can, I mean, sure.
Wes is having a party.
yeah. Is,
Don't say that. It's not quite what I would call a party.
February 7th, 6 or 7 is fine, she said.
Okay. So it sounds like we're set at 7 on the 7th. And we've only got, and I have found that, I know we're not a month out, but usually folks actually do better, surprisingly, with shorter notice.
Is that right?
Yes, because it gets on the calendar and then they forget and then they don't show up. Okay. All right. So let's jump in here to Chapter 3, Natural Systems Analysis. This chapter, as we discussed, discusses the various areas of environmental concern and other environmental features of the town, and concludes with some policy statements as well. A large number of those are similar to what's in your existing plan. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. So with that, we'll start. If folks have overall questions, please. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was asking a question. Where did this come from? Because you can't really map it back to our old plan.
The
Chapter 3, she said.
Chapter 3.
There's a natural analysis or natural systems analysis in the whole plan. It's just all these goals and policies and objectives. Where did that come from?
Those are by and large from your other plan.
Can you find it?
It is not in chapter. It's in a different chapter. Let's see. I don't have your other plan.
I got it.
So if you, there should be similar headings. Water quality and natural environment should be in there.
Natural systems?
Yeah, natural
Yes,
systems.
but towards the end, or either in your executive summary, you will have a water quality goal, and then you will also have a natural hazards goal. And then under those subject headers, there are policies and recommended actions. Where the syntax is incorrect in your old plan, where we sort of have policies that are recommended actions
Yeah.
and so forth, have been modified, so now you have actual policy statements and actual recommendations. But the content, by and large, of your existing plan, where the policies are still relevant, are contained in here and or updated.
Okay.
Compared with the new flood signs.
Pardon?
New flood signs are here.
New flood zones are here, yes ma'am.
Good job. I thought.
Thank you. The new flood zone maps are in there. But, remember, we want to, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but this is a new plan. We're not, so we want to make sure this plan still meets the needs of the town. Did you find that section, Vicki? Okay.
Did you find? No. I found the section, but I haven't found the
Here.
policy.
Some of them have changed.
Then,
Well, I understand, but I couldn't find any of it. And they started off.
Oh, wow.
They started
We're
off.
looking back when we got one put in yesterday.
so,
Well, because it started with goal 3.1, I was like, okay, what's goal 1.1 and 2.1?
Well, 3.1, so it's in the third
Well, it's
chapter.
chapter 3.
That's right.
Your first
3.1.
goal.
Third
So
chapter.
where's the goal of chapters 1 and 2?
so on page 87 of your old plan starts water quality and natural environment. And,
Right, there it is.
yeah. And then natural hazard mitigation is on page 90. And in your older plan, there,
And
Worse.
this is. I
some
think this is much more.
Policy.
some that perhaps were under the wrong category that have been reorganized as well. Yes, sir.
There was a discussion between me and Wes about pulling these things together and getting them in, putting them in an order that would be
More logical.
Logical, yeah. it looks
I think
more
it's
logical
much
to
better.
me.
It's a real
Yeah, it
improvement.
It is
but
very
I read
good.
through it, and I couldn't find any real differences other than it had been reorganized and was in,
I like it organized like this. It's much clearer.
I like the schematic form that's put in.
Okay, thank you. Alrighty. So, last time we went page by page. So if we want to start on, unless there's any other overall questions. Okay. start on page 1.
Let me ask just a general question.
Yes, sir.
You know, I have some concerns about offshore drilling and seismic blasting. It seems like that this authorizes the town to protect its offshore resources. But how much do we have? You know, it says out to the 3-mile limit.
That's the state.
So does Holden Beach, does our town council have the authority to enact any kind of ordinance or anything out to that 3-mile line?
You could pass a resolution and hope that the state has rules and regs out to that line, but beyond that 3-mile line, it's up to the federal government to regulate, if I recall. And so you can't, unfortunately, you don't have a little segment of water.
That's not our concern. I don't see where that's concern of what we're talking about.
I have a question though. We do have some
Tell you what,
because we have rules about you can't use a jet ski within X number of feet and.
But that is within your corporate limits of your town. So if your corporate limits, say hypothetically, did extend out to 3 miles or what have you, then you would have certain rules and regulations that presumably you could have authority over things like that. The state has also preempted some things that don't allow local units of government to regulate.
You know, without the county just now got a special legislative law that allows them to enforce wake zones and jet skis and that kind of thing. You can write the ordinance, but you don't have any rights to enforce it on public trust water. We don't enforce wakes. You know, anything in the public, anything below the high water mark is going to belong to the state. But the state just does allow by a local legislative law to enforce some of those things, but you have to go to them to get it approved. It has to be added into a law that allows you to add it. That's why you have things like party boats and stuff that can't be allowed in town, but they can pull up to a dock. Okay, like Calabash, for instance. The public trust land out there, you're not going to write a rule out there. Now you can write a rule where they leave land and come back on, unless you got, real
Not
special.
all of us are opposed to well drilling.
Right. Well, I understand that. To answer your question about what the plan does, very important to get public input, because what the plan does is it's our plan, and if the plan gives the impression that the town doesn't want to see those things, then it tells any outside agency who will look at the land use plan because it's required that the community as a whole is not real happy with those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So although it don't give them any regulatory authority, it does give them, it is actually a living document or a document that says the community as a whole don't want to see these things near them, and it literally can give you legal rights, sort of like Sunset had for years to stop the bridge. Do you follow what I'm saying? Because their actual plan called for the bridge and all that stuff to remain intact and stay there. So they fought that new bridge for years, and that's what they used. They used the concept that the town as a whole, didn't want it.
So we can't regulate it, but we could put our opinion of it in this land
Absolutely.
use.
Yes.
So that we are taking
And then
a
elected
stand.
officials, for example, would pass a resolution and send it to the powers that be. Town of Holden Beach doesn't support X, Y, Z.
Well, they would have
Or
to-
they do support
Right.
whatever
I
it
saw
is.
you
And,
put
and they would
something,
either
we
have to
support
amend
this,
the
that, and
land
the other
use,
thing.
if they were against it, they'd have to amend the land use plan, or they would have to recognize that they are passing a resolution that is in contradiction to their land use plan.
Well, it just seems like a lot of language in this says that the town's going to protect
Right.
those natural resources. I can see that, everything says about protecting our natural resources.
That's on the island.
And that is by and large the purpose of the Coastal Zone Management Act and why you have these Campbell land use plans. They're all based out of protection of natural resources and so on and so forth.
Yeah, well-
and that's why this looks overly, to some folks, maybe overly environmental, but a lot of these are policies and the goals that we have to discuss for it to be approved by the state.
Yeah, and most of these policies are supposed to, that you're talking about, those particular ones, are not designed, are designed for us to do things on the dry land to protect those resources out
Right.
there. That's the whole point of it.
On the island.
Yeah, see, we manage what's happening on the dry land to protect the AECs in those areas. So,
I think we should stay away from that.
Do you know, did the commissioners pass an ordinance when all the municipalities were passing ordinances regarding that?
Mhm.
So our commissioners have said that they're.
Yeah, we're one of the 14 towns.
So I think we should put it in our land use. I mean, if it's something that the commissioners have passed, or at least we should have a discussion about it.
That is up to the committee. There is, it's pretty easy to write a policy one way or the other, and we can, and this would be the chapter that would make sense for it to be in. But should we wait till we get to the
Yep.
policies then?
Yep.
Be fine.
Okay. All right. Anything about, any other general questions? Okay.
I want to speak again to the fact that we are, the areas of environmental concern and our inlets, all that's being changed. So are we going to be,
Our inland hazard areas?
yes, that's all being changed. What are we doing with this and that? How are we making this merge?
You have, well,
This is a cart before the horse, I know.
if it was already changed and the rule was enacted, then this would be modified to reflect that. But unfortunately, we got to go with what the rule is now because there's no telling. No matter how you feel about the General Assembly, there's no telling what ultimately happens one way or the other with certain things. So I agree that it's not very timely, but it may be something that I can try to work with Tim once, assuming that the change does happen, we can get this modified and updated. It'd be fairly simple.
Because this is not going to be finished in a month.
Is the other? Is the other thing?
If the other is finished and if the inlet hazard area is enacted before this is adopted, then we'll update it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It seems like we're going side by side,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
kind of what I'm thinking. Parallel.
Okay.
I learned a new word.
You're looking at
Benthic.
ocean hazard systems, is that what you're referring to on page 4? Is that where we are?
Wait, so we done with 3 and 4?
We've got 1 and 2.
I had a question about the unvegetated beach area. What's the difference between that and the Strand?
What page are you on?
I'm on 3-4.
There
Ocean hazard system outlined the 3 different parts.
in southeastern North Carolina, I'm not sure we have any unvegetated beach areas.
Isn't that what the Strand is?
Well, that is the ocean erodible area. You meaning the area, but basically where you hang out on the beach. Yeah, that's the ocean erodible area. Unvegetated beach areas are where historically you've had wash through, and those are usually on uninhabited islands. Where it's beyond where your dune would be, for example. And
I thought sometimes on inlet areas.
also potentially in inlet areas, but it's mainly in your northeastern North Carolina beaches, Outer Banks area.
Thanks.
where the
Where
high
there's
tide-
no
Where the
vegetation.
high tide
Yeah.
ends.
Yeah, all of
still
it's
have
gone.
dry sand.
There's
Yeah.
no vegetation.
Yeah.
We don't have any according
No.
to this
We
paragraph.
No.
don't have any.
Nope.
Anything else on 3 or 4?
You guys all on page 5?
5 or 6?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
We now, Tim, is this correct? If the new flood maps, we have an X zone?
We've always had X zones.
We've always had an X zone? I thought they did away with
We've had
it.
several X zones.
Mm-hmm.
X zones are actually flood zones that have no restrictions.
Okay, so do we not need to address the X zone in this plan?
Yeah, X zones are considered outside.
The
flood
special
zones.
flood hazard area.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought there was mention of it.
There's
We did make mention of the 500-year floodplain and the fact that you're uncommon from most barrier island communities that you do have some areas that are not in a special flood hazard area.
Is that the Doomscape area?
Yep, on the east end of the island.
We've got another one somewhere now.
Around Carolina.
Yeah, there's also one on one of our, we have an X zone out there on one of our spoil areas.
Carolina, my house is now, when we first built
Yeah.
15 years ago, it was in the X zone, and then it went to another zone, and now we're back in the X
Yeah,
zone.
Really?
yeah, we've always had a low area over there till the last maps.
I must be on the high point of the island or something.
Well, that's a
On the
good
mountain, come down
X
to the
zone, that's
mountain.
pretty
You know, Mount Carolina.
There's,
Mount Holden.
there's interterrestrial kind of stuff going on there.
Right.
Can somebody explain an AO zone to me?
AO is a special flood hazard area where you.
You know where I'm going with this.
Meaning how it's delineated
It's where our town hall is. I believe, am I not right?
on the map.
I think that's where we, church, the town hall, all this area.
It is, yeah. So there's typically not base flood elevations that are mapped, and so you have to use.
AE is areas with moderate wave action. VEs are areas with 3-foot wave action. AOs are areas of concern with what's considered
Sheet flow.
sheet flow.
Waters of chance.
I saw that.
So water's a chance, but it's not going to be in wave action, which is kind of hard to imagine right here. Be the first to go. That changed. That should have changed with the last maps because we're pretty high right here. We
That's
were
the
at
new
2
flood
feet.
zone.
Yeah.
Flood zone.
So does this need to be adjusted then?
No, it's still you're
No,
still
that's the
AO.
flood map.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's
Yep.
an AO here.
Yeah, it's still AO.
I never heard of AO before.
It's the new
There's a
flood
couple
zone.
more too. We
Yeah,
got-
It's new.
it's
There's
new.
some other designations too. I hope you don't find them all.
The only place I see is here.
There's
Maybe
some-
one little spot over there at the end of
Where'd you get that
Doomscape.
at?
It's in my book.
You got
It's
it.
the back of the map. Do you know how that?
I got these one thing back.
Are you in charge of?
Three.
You've got the reprinted one. I don't know, this one.
Yeah, you got cheated, Woody.
That's
That-
it.
Okay.
Not cheating.
We all got nice one.
You got a cheat
Did
map.
you just get that? You
Thank
got a
you,
nice
Mama.
one.
You didn't get a fold out.
Yeah, look at that, Woody. Take it back.
I'm sorry.
I think that Wes is the one that did this.
No, we all got what, we all got that.
I brought
We all
the.
got the fold outs last week.
Here,
or
you
last
want to give
week.
this to Woody? Do you have?
Well, maybe because we're a little older.
You got the fold out. You
Yeah,
got it from Rhonda.
Just printed it now.
We gotta put
Woody,
some
here's-
kitty chair.
Justin will be so kind to donate his to you.
Thank you.
You'll have to put your own holes in it.
Yeah.
I was here the last time.
Yes,
How
he
I got
was.
this. Thank you, sir.
That's right, he got them, but they're minuscule.
Hey, he's got good eyesight,
I
so
knew
that's
it.
what it's worth.
All right,
My
back on-
apologies. I don't know how that happened.
Come on, Wes.
Back on page 6. Any other comments
Here
or
you go.
questions? And we'll go on here.
See.
Tim, did you want to address the CRS rating?
I don't know what I'm talking about.
Is that, I
He's
assume
worked
that's
hard on
accurate,
that.
that we're at 8 right now?
My recollection was that you are an 8. Is that correct? Unless it changed.
Yes, and this-
We're an 8?
Changed.
According to your notes, we're an 8.
What, Rhonda, did that change?
It has not changed.
Okay.
Just what happened.
But you had plans to change it, right? Because like when we did things like added in freeboard, that would make us go down.
Well, I have that right later when we talk about recommended action. He talks about getting it better in
Yes.
one of your policies, so we can talk
Okay,
about
we'll
it
get to
there
that
and
then.
what are the recommended.
Deal.
There's a CRS visit and some other things.
Yeah, so
It's
it
a
is
fairly
what it is now.
complex
This is
process.
an accurate statement,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then
It
it's
is.
an action to get it better.
Okay.
It was very.
Yeah.
Okay, page 7. 8. Anybody?
These are just definitions, as I see.
Yep.
I read mine on the iPad, so.
9, 10,
Hang on, Tracy.
We've
We
got a-
can't flip pages
Oh,
that
we need
fast.
to, we need to back up to
Yes.
3.5. We need to back up to 3.5. We've got those three zones designated there.
Yes?
There is actually the possibility and the potential for another zone. Yeah, there is. There's one.
Okay.
There's actually, our island, the way it's set up, they have another designation. It's actually mentioned in our new floodplain ordinance.
Is it the A
I don't-
zone?
No, it's actually a A zone with wave action.
Oh,
AE with
A to the
minimum-
VE standards, the Lenoir?
The Limois, that's
Yeah.
it. So we may need to add the Limois section in there somewhere, unless it will apply because the building code picked it up.
That's right.
The building, now, they're talking about trying to get it out in this month, but I haven't been following as closely as I should. But if it doesn't come out, it's going to be it's going to be one we use. It won't be out of the floodplain management ordinance, but it will be out of the North Carolina, be in the North Carolina laws for building
And
construction.
apply to our island, so.
It'll apply to our island.
Yeah, but the different thing, it's not necessarily mapped. Well, I guess you can map it,
I
but
said I didn't say it needed to be mapped. I
Yeah.
said it needs to be mentioned that we do have those Limois.
the Lenoir,
How
yeah,
do you spell that?
just like
Like it
it
sounds?
just like it sounds.
LIMWA.
Yeah,
It stands for
Limited line of
moderate-
wave action or something like that.
the limit of moderate wave action.
yes.
Yeah.
So-
It's basically A zones that have the potential for 3 foot or for the potential for wave action.
So is our map going to change to include that?
It's essentially where they've taken some areas out of the V zone, but they're still requiring you to build the V zone standards.
Because
So
with the
it's a little bit
Limois, you have to build
disingenuous.
to the east zone.
Well,
It-
we don't have any Limois.
Oh, you don't?
Designated. No, we don't.
Okay.
But that's what I'm trying to tell you. It's
Okay.
a problem because the building code defines a construction in those areas and then defines what those areas are. So the fact that the maps didn't pick it up means it's now state law that if you're in one of those areas, that's why I'm saying we can wait and see what happens this month, and we're going to try to take it out. It got put in there when they copied the ICC. So if they get it out of the new code, because it's in there right now, and they became effective January 1, then we don't have to put it in there.
But
Okay.
we don't have any.
No, something
Not
simple.
mapped, not mapped.
Oh.
Yeah, you got a federal standard that we don't have, but we've got and they didn't map it. And there's a reason why they didn't map it. There's somehow, if they don't pick it up, you're supposed to help them pick it up, according to Dan Brubaker. So, but the biggest problem is that the state legislature has picked it up. Building codes are state law in North Carolina, and they've picked up the definition. So what they describe is what we have. Areas like Scotch Bonnet is one of them. Yeah, when the water comes up and wind blows, we got wave action. Several of them in these along the coast, the ocean front here that went to AEs, every one of those have potential for wave action.
That's right.
Yeah, so the building code describes that.
So,
Yeah.
so what we can do is we can put a question mark here on Lenoir, and I will go ahead and just make a note that in the future it's possible that I'll explain what it is.
I'll get all the information, and then before we do anything, we'll bring it back up.
Okay.
So in those areas that, in here where it described that building codes might be relaxed, the Limois will contradict that. For those properties that could have been relaxed because they're in AE, the Limois would say, no, you can't. Is that correct?
You still wouldn't have to have your lowest horizontal member at 16 or 17, but if you go to a 12, you'd have to have your lowest horizontal member at a 12, rather than your first floor at a 12. So there's about a foot difference there.
No, we don't have it. We wrote an ordinance. Our local ordinance does not identify the difference between
Okay,
A.
all right.
That's right.
And well, here then it's
Everything's from one area.
Okay.
If it's the
Lowest
BFE for
horizontal
two
plus two.
BFE plus 2 feet, your lowest horizontal member has to be, structural horizontal member has to be above it. We did that to help, and we did that with the height, to help give people more room for better architectural features, but to also give them better opportunities for insurance without having
Or
to
the
live
CRS, right?
with a
Yeah.
CRS.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get into that.
yeah.
Sorry.
But then there's some other rule, dune modification and fill things that. But we'll put in a note here about the Lenoir. The base flood elevation, that height doesn't change though. All right. We're on to 11 and 12, is that correct, Tracy?
I don't know. I think we're at 9 or 10.
Okay.
Any comments on 9, 10? Okay. 11, 12?
Curiosity, what is driving us not being shellfish compliant?
It is typically your amount of impervious coverage adjacent to what would be shellfishing waters. So the canal areas, whether it's an Ocean Isle, Surf City, those are historically where you're within about quarter to sometimes a half mile of those. It's prohibited to shellfishing.
And the motor's leaking oil.
And fecal coliform typically comes from stormwater runoff, and so that's what closes those shellfish areas.
Yeah, fresh water. The fresh water causes bacteria to grow. That's why the state of North Carolina wants our mud puddles to stay our mud puddles and not go out into the water because it pollutes the water.
I have a question. Do we not have primary nursery areas on the island? Are they just on the mainland near us then?
They are, and they're on map,
The map.
I believe they're on map 3-5. 3-5,
All those estuaries
yeah.
out there.
Yeah,
Most of them in public trust areas.
yeah.
Well, I know that that's the issue in Sunset Beach. For the last several years, they've been fighting those primary nursery areas about dredging in primary nursery areas. And so the town of Holden Beach doesn't control any of those areas, and we wouldn't have to worry about whether that would be somebody else's problem.
That's
Or
correct.
who does control? Does Brunswick County control those primary nursery areas?
These ones
Whether or not they would be dredged? Or?
are in the jurisdiction of Brunswick County.
Okay.
These particular ones. So now remember, what's on this data is this data for these primary nursery areas is not 100% accurate, to an engineering survey level. But yes, if the Division of Coastal Management, DEQ, all of those agencies would be involved in a major permit review for any dredging that would occur in the primary nursery areas. If it was identified as a primary nursery area, then it potentially would put a halt to
But
the
as long as
project.
we don't have to
You
control
do
over
not.
any of them, that's not a problem we have. And
That is
want
correct.
one, we'll try to buy.
That's right.
Okay.
Anything else on 11, 12? All right, moving on to 13, 14.
So the managed farmland is our property that's off the island, correct? I'm on 14.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
I know, I saw that at first and I'm
Where do we have a pine forest?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, 15, 16?
I've got questions.
Go ahead.
On policy 3.1.e, low impact development, at the very end of that, clustering housing to allow profitable development density while maximizing open space. Did we do that?
You can. You have some remaining tracks that are conducive to allowing that, but you don't.
No, is that in any of our ordinances now?
No, there's. I don't believe you have cluster provisions. But
Do you have an example of cluster homes?
so it would be.
Like Ocean Isle, zero setback, is that what that means?
They have some new subdivisions. That would be, so say you had a 5-acre tract, and they wanted to put 10 homes on half-acre lots. That'd be just a conventional 10-acre subdivision on half-acre lots. If you supported provisions to to allow for example, a cluster subdivision, you could cluster those homes on, smaller lots and then preserve a certain amount of open space, ultimately results in less impervious coverage and less runoff. Because you've got 5 homes on, maybe they're still on their own lots and they're not on zero setback, but maybe the lots are a quarter acre or smaller, and then there's an open space area.
Would it be too if you had like a string of 5 or 6 condos that are all connected, like we have some on the, and then,
Potentially, yes. If
I
they,
mean, there's no land between them at all. It's a cluster of 5 or 6 or 10 or however.
so long as there was a contingent of that area that was preserved as open space,
Right.
and not, maximized, and they took up the entire building envelope.
So
But
density doesn't increase, density stays the same.
that's right.
Open area increases.
Correct.
Usable open area increases
Yes.
in cluster
Density on the
homes.
whole tract does not.
That's right. But
We don't do that now, is why I was wondering, how that kind of.
and it can be taken out as well.
That's really something that you would have to plan for, that was never planned for here. All the lots are cut.
Yeah.
Well, it implies that when it says the town supports low-impact development practices, oh, so that's just an example of it.
And it just says such things.
Okay.
Yeah. So potentially, say for example, and this is just an example, say a developer came and I want to do a cluster home, he could point to, you do have provisions here that would generally support it. The elected officials and the planning board could still deny it. That would just be an example.
Okay.
Good point.
So Wes, going back to my pickiness a while ago, you're starting us off with goal 3.1. I notice it's chapter 3.1, but it implies there's a goal 1 and goal 2, which I haven't seen.
So it is tailored to, because it is chapter 3.
I got
and
it.
so
But it implies there's a goal 1 and goal 2 somewhere.
Well, there it is, right? Goal 3.1.
No, he's saying goal
Goal
1.1.
In chapter
This is-
1.
Yeah. Is there one there?
there,
No, but that's where it would live, right?
Yes.
and
It would live in chapter 1, but we don't have goals in chapter 1.
that's correct.
Two.
That's
There
correct.
is a
So it'd be
two,
goal
Patrick.
1.1.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
This
This is typically the way it's done, is that you will start, that if you've got a policy or something, you're gonna start it with the chapter that it's in, and then go to 1. And then if it has, and you do it that way so that you know what chapter it's in when you're considering it.
Right.
That's
If
right.
it's 3.1, you know it's in chapter 3.
Right.
If chapter 2 doesn't have it, then it won't be in there.
Yep.
So there won't be a 2.
Also-
You won't be searching back and forth. This is a tool by which staff uses stuff, and this is typically the way it's done.
So
we can
different if
find-
you have exhibits. You have
Yeah.
exhibit 3.1, you might not have any
Well,
exhibits in
Come back
chapter
in later,
2.
you don't have
Or
to-
figure 3.1,
And we may
right?
want, me and Rhonda may want to add something to policy
Table
3.1A, it'll be 3.1A dash 2.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
In the old plan, they all start with 9, so it's 9.1. But then they are all in there, and this should be easier for Rhonda and Tim to review. They're broken out rather than all lumped into one.
That makes sense. Like I
Okay.
said, it just,
Yeah.
I'm telling you that if we're looking for policy 3.1, I'm not going to be looking for policy 1 and 2 first. I'm going to go to chapter 3.
And go to chapter 3. Start with 3.
Okay,
yeah, it makes sense.
okay. And I also had a question about policy 3.1G. Could you just explain that to start out with?
This was a policy that was in your existing plan, but basically it says that this is a catch-all. So, say a major development permit was proposed for the Spoil Islands, and the consistency, the developer was granted that permit. Well, if that proposal is not consistent with zoning and subdivision regulations, it would be denied by the town anyways, but the town also then has it in its back pocket to come back and appeal the issuance of that major permit and say, whoa, developer, don't go and say you've got some sort of common law vested right on approval that you got a major permit. It is invalid because you never should have been granted it. And I have seen this happen before, and so I would recommend that the policies, yes.
Okay,
Yep.
good.
So,
In case
so I think-
whoever's issuing a major permit
doesn't.
Hadn't read this or doesn't look at it, definitely doesn't look at our ordinance. That takes care of it.
Yep.
So
When
are
they
there
issued that permit.
separate
Gotcha.
policy statements more than this, or is this it? I mean, it says policy 3.1G. I mean, is that the whole policy there?
Ordinances.
Or is it referring to another document that's called policy 3?
No, that's this. That's just
That's just it.
the numbering system.
Okay. I mean, when it says policy, I assumed there was some policy statement or
This is the policy statement. This is,
3.1G, that's it.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Government at work.
okay, is everybody cool with that then, with 3.1.g? I had a typo on 3.1.I2.
Okay.
Government for to carry.
Yeah, that's probably not right.
Yeah,
Where is that exactly?
So right
At
down
the
there,
bottom of
last
the
Oh,
page,
thank you.
right here.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sure.
All right, moving on to 17 and 18.
Okay, there, lots. Anybody else? On 3.1.j, stormwater management,
Mhm.
BMPs is not spelled out, but it seemed to be the first time it's mentioned. So could you
Yes, ma'am.
spell that out?
Mhm.
And then
No, so now you're starting to do some recommendations, right? So now we're, so how does that turn into actions?
So at the end of this plan, when you're given chapter 6, there will be all of the recommended actions will be in a big matrix. And there'll be some narrative that says, planning board is charged with, you guys, it's up to you guys, elected officials, to figure out what you want to do. I'm not going to suggest, well, you should do this recommend action over this one. And so what I always recommend to the boards is once you're done with this, let it sit for a little bit, maybe 2 months later, come back to it, pull out that matrix, and you guys figure out your action plan for the year. Do we want to do this one?
it
So-
basically generates our to-do list.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so I'm good with that, but some of these are very much top of the list of the survey, so I'm wondering if somehow we can capture that as we're going through this. Like, I remember from the survey, this storm water stuff was a big issue for a lot of people.
Mhm.
So I'm just wondering if somehow we can, I don't know if we want to highlight that, or do we do it later? Maybe we just do it later
Yeah,
when
when
we're
the
going
main-
through the list and we're looking at the survey and say, oh yeah, that was a big issue, and these recommendations map back to this number one concern on the survey.
I would recommend that as you guys are on the planning board, that this is the start of your work once this thing is done, because we can try to prioritize them,
Okay.
but
I'll
it's
just make a note myself.
okay.
But that's what I was trying to figure out, how they map back to.
The goal is, yes, if there are things that were identified in that survey, I've tried to capture them in here. But
Yeah.
I don't want to profess to say you guys need to do this first.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
And then I have a question on that action there. It says, when town roads are repaired or resurfaced, the town shall seek state funding to assist with its effort to treat stormwater generated by road surfaces using infiltration devices and other structural, non-structural BMPs. Have we ever done that? Should it say shall? And
Or why do they have to wait for the town to pay for it if they get state funding if it's a town road? Because,
Yeah.
Isn't it all DOT though?
not the
No.
town roads.
No.
The only thing they own is the one
WWF?
stretch,
Okay.
yeah. All those other streets that are,
Brunswick Avenue is
some of them aren't even paved.
We can change it to should consider.
okay.
Well, I don't even necessarily think that it implies that if they don't get state funding, they don't do that, but I don't
Right.
think that's the case either. They should use our own funding to do that.
Well, the word assist kind of covers that. To assist.
Tim, do we ever do that?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, where it says DOT's gonna take care of their own roads.
Right, no,
Okay.
I was looking at the bottom part of
And we
that.
can't, the state already covers us for what we're gonna get through PAL funds. So they're most likely not gonna assist you with any type of infiltration when you start to repair a road. And on top of that, that type of a system, according to how much you're resurfacing, if you're patching, you're fine, but if you're
Yep.
resurfacing enough that it drives you into a state permit, you're getting into a whole new ballgame of actions.
Well, that's right.
So I would say that you're on the right track. I would say that wording needs to be changed exactly. We
Okay.
can always look for additional fundings or grants or something to that effect. But I really caution that shall and that part about what types of, it says by road surfaces using infiltration devices and other structural or non-structural BMVs. Swells are typically the way to go. I guess you could leave that part in there. It just needs to take that shall out.
What does BMP stand for?
Best management practices.
Well, I mean, if you look at the first sentence, the town shall require the DOT. I don't think we get to require them anything.
That's exactly what I was saying.
Yeah.
The DOT is,
We don't-
we don't even get to talk to them unless they want us to talk to them.
I mean, it's a nice idea, but
I've always had, since I've been here, I've had a good working relationship with them, with the stuff that I've done. But I had contact.
Do you have required too much of them?
Huh?
You haven't required them to do anything?
Yeah, they've helped me a lot. I mean, I've worked quite a bit with DOT since I've been here. We've worked with them with the signs. I worked with them with the West End Gate and the structures down there. I've worked with them 2 or 3 times.
There are things that they're amenable to, particularly if there's support, for example, an adopted policy document, for example. But, and this is a recommended action that was in your previous plan, but I think both those shalls could, the town should work with DOT to use infiltration systems is probably more conducive to reality.
Right.
and then I mean, I like the idea, but
Okay, I also had a question about the next one. Actions they can take to reduce stormwater runoff. Let me read the whole thing. The town shall continue its efforts to educate homeowners about actions they can take to reduce stormwater runoff from their property. And my question is, do we do that now? And B, shouldn't there not be any runoff?
We have ordinances. The town shall continue its efforts to educate homeowners about actions they take. We have an ordinance now that says that you have to maintain all your runoff on your own property.
Right.
And typically, from your impervious area, the property that's there that's not impervious, we don't require you to handle that. It sheet flows, which is the best practices under both your land use plan and under good environmental rules. But yes, the ordinance says that if you have impervious, but that other part, we don't. We don't have, that can run where it runs.
Yeah.
You follow what I'm saying? Now, they can't force someone else to take their water. That's also in our ordinance. So, but it can run. I mean, it can
It
run all over
will
their
run.
property if they want to, yeah.
It will run from
Yeah,
waterway to canal to the street, to
Yeah.
waterway to canal.
yeah.
So you can still install rain gardens or other things
That's right.
of this nature.
For instance, when it talks about educate, we do that all the time. People go, how am I supposed to keep water on my site? We'll build a bulkhead. Build a 2-foot wall, retaining wall. You know what I mean? Keep it on your property.
you're
Seriously.
talking about all the water that comes down from your gutters.
No, the water comes down from your gutters has to be put into an infiltration system. And that's impervious area. And it has to go into the ground and has to be an engineered system.
When did that ordinance go into place? Because all houses don't have that.
Well, yeah, I
The
don't know.
new
I don't remember
ones,
exactly what it was, but the ones for the last 10 years have it. I can tell you
That's
that.
what I'm
It's
saying.
longer than that.
99, I
Yeah.
believe.
It was.
99.
My gutters don't go anywhere except right at the bottom of the gutter.
Yeah.
They're supposed to go underground and out to somewhere.
If it's pre-ordinance, you're just non-conforming.
Right.
Grandfather.
Yeah. We'll catch
Unless
it.
it's snuck in. As we go
Especially
through
now.
90. I got one that goes down.
Only if I try to
Yes,
fix
it
it.
does.
And I got 2 other
Right.
ones that,
Be careful what
No,
you
there's
say.
a lot of them. There was a lot of them that came before the ordinance.
I mean, my house was built in
Yeah.
the
Justice
80s.
system.
She's non-conforming, which means she can't do anything else to her house.
That's
She
if
just-
she
No,
raised
no,
it.
no, that's not how that works. She can't do anything that adds to the non-conformance.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if she wanted to add gutters, she'd have to
Fix it.
fix it.
There you go.
I have gutters.
She already had it.
Don't talk, just stop
Tracy,
talking.
you just need to be quiet.
Okay, moving on. Anything else
Yeah.
on 17? I have something on, are you,
I do,
That needs a period at the end of that sentence.
where are you? N?
Recommend-
So are we changing all
Yeah, I
those
got
shalls to
and
we?
properly
Three,
constructed, yeah.
1K2.
Should.
What about me?
I have something on N. Commercial and recreation projects such as dredging to increase fishing along tidal waters, oyster reseeding programs, and properly constructed artificial reefs will be supported. That is a non-starter.
Okay.
That last part of that sentence should be struck.
The artificial reefs.
Yep.
What
Because
about living shorelines?
We can put in something in here about living shorelines as well. Now,
the town does not support artificial reefs.
Okay.
We went through that up
Okay.
one side and down the other.
okay,
And it was shut down.
all
Are you
right.
talking about the terminal growing?
I am.
It's
That-
not
that-
the
that-
same.
that's
Oh,
just-
it's
No.
artificial.
Artificial
Those
reef.
tires and.
Oh, it's tires.
All right, well, we don't support that either, do we? All those
Well-
tires that are now on the beach half the
No,
time?
I don't
We
know.
probably didn't support it then.
So I don't think the town supports that.
Okay.
I don't,
I don't know.
This is where
Well, I'll
you've
give you an
got
example of
a
an
dredge
artificial
wreck
reef. Can I give-
or
Sure.
He just gave you one.
yeah.
What? I'm sorry,
They
what?
take a ship out there and sink it, an old
Yeah.
ship and sink it, and it's a very good habitat for
Oh,
fish
yeah.
and fisheries.
And it encourages recreational and commercial
So where
fishing.
would that be in our,
Yeah, it
But
supports
it's not
the
in our
economy.
tidal waters.
And it's known to support the economy, I mean, it supports the economic engine of the fishing and that
but
kind of
where
stuff.
in a Holden Beach would that be, for example?
It's not in your
It's not in our
jurisdiction.
jurisdiction, but
Yeah.
we don't want to discourage artificial reefs. I mean, they have historically been a good thing, not a bad thing.
That's
I
right.
Now,
understand.
if you want to say you don't want to,
except the one across.
It's that same PR thing you was talking about earlier.
the
yeah, if you don't
slow
want to
forward.
support artificial reefs, you know, you can exclude tires. But I don't think that's even allowed anymore.
Yeah, it's
I think
They
typically
said that was
they.
an experiment.
So is the
Yeah.
terminal growing an example of an artificial reef?
No, that is
Okay.
a permanent erosion control
Okay.
Yeah.
structure, and there's a. We'll get to the one specifically related to that
That's on page 19.
that's 3.2D.
Yeah, okay, I see that.
Is
I
the
caught
boat
it.
beside a provision there, is that an artificial reef?
No, sir.
Okay, just checking.
But living shoreline would be a possibility?
If you want to add a provision about supporting living shorelines, we can add a policy. Is that the?
What is that? What's an example of that?
Communities are installing what they call a living shoreline with, usually they take oyster shells and put them out there, and then it encourages more oysters to glom onto them and form. And basically you're creating a natural breakwater that prevents erosion.
It's
So
an
like on the
And they
back
did
side of the
alternative
side,
to a bulkhead.
alternative to a bulkhead,
Yeah.
or in
Yeah.
addition.
They just did it at Sunset Beach.
Sunset Beach just did one. It's a new practice that's really
Where would we do
exploding.
one here? What would be
For example, let's say that somewhere along the intercoastal we had an area that we were going to put in a bulkhead. Instead of putting in a bulkhead, we could do an artificial. It's not a bulkhead. It would be
In this,
living shoreline. It's like an oyster.
It is. They just modified the general permit requirements to allow for property owners to do this as well. Historically, it's been a bureaucratic nightmare to try to get done because it requires a complicated permit. The state just modified the
have a
provisions
lot of
to allow
space.
these. So
Right down.
we can put one in here.
When you figure that.
Is it
No, I
the
meant, it's here,
Does
this
it-
is all we got, because this is,
town?
we can't do
Does
it
this
there.
board support
No, that says you can't.
allowing living shorelines? Is that-
Take the oysters and
Okay.
eat them. But you can still put the oyster thing there.
Vicky, I will put
Right.
one of those
Okay.
in
You just can't
here.
eat the oysters.
And then eventually make it clear up.
Everybody
Yeah,
for
there's a lot
is
of
everybody for the living
benefits.
shoreline?
Sure.
Sure.
I'm a fan. So
Anybody not against, not for it? Okay.
That will go probably in the next section where we talk about bulkheads, would be the most logical place.
Okay.
I just wanted to give her 2 thumbs up for recommendation action 3.1.W.1. Pat, take note. Consider implementation of an island-wide recycling program to reduce solid waste generation. That's a recommendation.
I also had one on that, for recommended action, another one, recycling of bottles and cans for public beach accesses.
You added another.
Yep, I did.
Okay.
3.1 W2.
Yep. Consider installation of recycling bins
Containers.
at beach
Yep.
access? Okay.
Public beach accesses.
Okay.
Because we have garbage cans
Okay.
We have
there.
garbage cans there now. Probably 95% of what is in those are actually recyclable.
Okay.
Could also sort that out.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Glass is hard to
That's
recycle.
what a lot of restaurants do. They're sorting that.
A lot of stuff's getting hard to recycle. Nobody
Not
wants to buy it.
problem.
But
On policy
it's almost
3.1B,
something that have to be
local
done.
cleanup efforts, the town supports the Big Sweep beach cleanup program, the local trash bash program, and all similar efforts. Do we do that?
Beach sweep?
Yeah.
Big
Yeah.
Sweep.
Yep.
I don't know, since Miss Pat passed, I don't know if we're doing or not. She was always in charge of it.
It says the town supports it. I mean, I'm in favor. I have no problem with it. I'm just wondering, do we?
Where are you? What page?
I'm on
3.1.V on page 18.
I got it.
The terminology can be removed. Presumably, it may be modified over years, but it can just be a generalized statement about beach cleanup programs,
Okay.
if that's more sufficient.
I think beach sweep is up and down the coast, isn't it?
Yeah.
Always on the same
I think
weekend.
she's not questioning to have it in
Oh,
there. She's
oh,
questioning, do we do
Oh,
it?
okay. Sorry. My
And she's
apologies.
asking,
Yeah.
I think, Tim and Rhonda if
Yeah.
if we
Yeah.
actually.
Miss
We
Pat
have the last couple
always
years,
sounds like
we did
charge of
before
it.
that, we did a
Yeah,
couple
we-
of
But
them.
I do think the language, though, would be better if it were more generic.
Okay.
We just support beach cleanup programs.
Okay.
You know, and that way, it wouldn't have to be limited to that one or include that one or not,
Okay.
or I
Yeah,
think
the
generic
local
would be
trash
better.
bash.
Yeah, I don't
Never
know.
heard of it.
Never heard of that one.
No,
Sounds like
I'm just
something
saying more
the
generic terminology would
Beach
allow us to
Protection
support it
Board
without being
take on.
too
Yeah.
Yeah,
specific.
there you go.
It'd be great PR for your committee. So let me ask, I'm sorry, I mean, I spent 36 years in the corporate world, I'm just getting used to the government world. So each of these policies.
It's a much better place.
I don't think
Corporate
so.
world.
All right,
Yeah, not really.
so each of these policies, I mean, who said these are policies? I mean, has the Board of Commissioners said, hey, we're going to protect prime wildlife habitats, or is it just,
So eventually they have to approve this, and
The
when
whole
they
plan.
approve it, then they're saying yes. And if they don't agree with any of the policies,
so they
That's
have, they
when-
have to go through each one of these and say,
Yeah.
yes,
Well,
or
they
no?
were
This is a
adopted.
consensus
Yeah.
document. You still could have a dissenting point of view to
Sure.
on the
any or
board, you mean?
any
Parts.
part of it. Yeah.
Parts
Yes.
and pieces.
This is
the
what we're
roadmap.
saying,
But-
we want as policy in this document.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
What we're
Get that
recommending,
wood.
but then the board approves it and it
Well, I get
becomes.
that part, but I mean, like I
We
said,
are.
In the corporate world, if you had a policy, you would have a separate statement that says, this is the policy, why we're doing it, what we're gonna do to implement this policy.
Sure.
And what we'll do if you
And,
don't do
and,
it.
and everybody signs off on it.
Sure. And I understand that. Now,
Here we just give it to Tim.
if
But I mean, it's just a statement, right? I mean, that's it, right?
and part of this, again, if I go back to where I was talking about how these documents are largely environmental in nature, and so the only regulatory component of this is for consistency review for CAMA major permits. And so some of these things may seem like they're out of place, but they can trigger putting a stop to a project that otherwise the town would not support. And so that's why, yeah, it may seem like, what is this doing in here? But there's an inherent reason for it. Now, if there's policies in here that you all feel like are very important and they don't have a particular recommended action for it, then you should point that out and we should come up with a recommended action for
Well,
it.
some of them you've got the town does X.
Right.
to
Support.
support this policy.
That's right.
Right.
Some of them we don't.
That's
Right.
right.
It's not a recommendation, it's just not anything.
And
That's
this-
right.
Now,
Me-
but there's
me-
some of these, I'm looking at them as we're going through them, there's
Yeah.
some of them, these, that are policies, but there's actually ordinances in place that are enforcing these policies.
Okay.
And I'm sure it's, the life cycle of the document has created some of them and covered some of them.
That's
And
right.
you're adding new ones, and so we'll be looking at them in the future, so if something comes up, if this doesn't cover us, we'll probably produce an ordinance or document that'll support what you want in your thing. And it usually don't happen overnight, but it usually happens when something triggers it.
Yeah,
So-
and this has a horizon to it that's not 1 year or whatever this
That's
has.
right.
This last one was done 9 years ago, so I mean, it's supposed to be a footpath, and there would be things that would block you from proceeding with these things, some practical, some
Right.
not. I mean, cost, things, it's easy for us to say something without understanding the full cost of
That's
implementation
right.
and the like, and so that's,
Yeah, the way we use this document is that anything that comes in the office that is not an everyday thing that we already know, we will literally look at it, or an ordinance that we're going to change to see if it's gonna violate the land use, or if it's in character with the land use.
Yeah.
We usually do that. And then there's some parts of the ordinance that mandate you do that.
That's right. Well,
Yeah.
and state law also requires whenever you are modifying your planning or zoning ordinances that you look at this document for consistency review. And so and you're looking at the policies specifically and the position of the town on a various issue.
That's that consistency statement that we
Yeah.
have to send whenever we talk about an ordinance change.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Anytime you do anything in chapter 150, 1 through 158.
157,
Yeah. Land usage.
Thank you.
Anything else
Sure.
on 318?
I was wondering where our prime wildlife habitats are. Is that the beach or?
Okay, we're right now, it says objective 3.2, protection against damage from hurricanes, severe weather, other hazards. We wrapped up a bunch of that stuff in our hazard mitigation plan when we worked on that. And right now we're working on those lift stations, which just tells you how this document is actually tied to other stuff.
Vicki, yes, your estuaries and yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Policy 3.2.8 says development hazardous areas. This council uses a variety of methods, including CAMA setback requirements and the flood damage prevention ordinance to discourage the development of properties that can be reasonably foreseen as potentially hazardous. The policy shall have a reference to the right of the private property owners. The policy shall have deference for the rights of private property owners. Is that why it doesn't reference reference the town's ordinance? It only does the flood preventive ordinance.
Yeah, and the setback requirements.
Right, but it doesn't reference town ordinances.
Well, this is, you mean your zoning ordinance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shouldn't it reference our zoning ordinance?
You can add your zoning ordinance
We
in
need
here.
to add it
Yeah.
because we have provisions for dunes and other things that's not in the land use section.
Okay.
Right.
It's in there.
CAMA setback requirements, the flood damage prevention ordinance, and the land, is it a land development code?
No, it's the town's ordinances. There's
Okay.
There's a whole section that
And-
goes to dune protection and that kind
And
of
all
stuff. That's
town,
regulatory.
and all town ordinances related to land
Right.
use development, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything else on 18? All right, 19.
Anybody else?
So in 19, I have this flood insurance, 3.2.8. Take action necessary to reduce the cost of flood insurance to property owners by maintaining and improving the community rating system status. And then the action is continue to train staff on steps that could be taken to improve the CR rating. So I think that's too broad, and we should say that the town should create an action plan to reduce the rating, and what would the cost be? You know, obviously, if whatever they're going to reduce the rating is going to be a cost. So I would like to see a little bit more meat in that recommendation.
Mhm.
Not
So-
just train staff, but what is
Sure.
your plan to reduce that?
Create action plan
To reduce the rating?
to improve CRS rating.
Right.
There you go, Tim.
What?
There's another job for you. Create an action plan.
And then-
create action plan which includes
Understands
costs.
it as well as you do.
There's a guideline out there.
It's
And
Yes.
it's got
700
less
pages.
to do with, it's got less to do with educating the town and more to do with what the parameters are that you fall within.
It's complicated.
Got less to
Yeah.
do with educating town staff and setting up an action plan than it does how we fall within the system, things that were done in the past, that kind of thing. And there's quite a complicated, I mean, we're well versed in it. You know, I mean, if we could have gotten it lower, we would have gotten it lower. But, you know, there's two separate things that go on for CRS. You have two separate entities that evaluate you, and those evaluations are given numbers. Depending on how much resources, time, your location, physical stuff is all bearing on it. I mean, it's all bearing on it, and even the state building codes bear on it. The reason you're not a 7 is because of the North Carolina State Building Codes. I said that in several meetings in the past, is that the building codes are not written so they allow for the ISO rating to be so low. They won't allow it to go so low. While they will give it to South Carolina because they have different codes, our legislatures write the code in such a way.
Then how do other North Carolina towns have a lower rating than we do?
I don't know. I asked that exact same question when the code doesn't allow it, and I've gotten no answer.
Because
You
some of
talking
them
about
fell
I've asked the exact
below
same question.
ranges. Yeah.
When we ask why we can't get lower, we're told we cannot get lower
We
because
are.
the
And
building
there's
codes
some
have more than
things
a
that
3-year
apply.
cycle. So how is it Oak Island can't seem to get lower either?
And there's some things that apply that other communities have that we don't have here that you get credit for.
Yeah.
Right. So like
Dams.
and
Yeah, we don't have any dams.
I mean, lots of things that we just don't have here, so we can't get any credit
in your
for.
corporate limits, say you had a big undeveloped open space area,
I mean,
you know,
there's-
but you don't want to extend your
It's a-
corporate limits across the intercoastal. I don't recommend it,
Yeah.
but you could pick up
Every
points
time-
for that.
That's right.
Every time
Yeah.
somebody donates open space, I tell y'all that contributes to our
That's
ability
right.
to have the opportunity to get it lower when I encourage the town to buy land. I come to y'all with just about everything you need to know.
So would
So
that
far-
come in, so then when you create your action plan, that's what you would put that in there?
I'm not going to create an action plan based off of what a subcommittee tells me to do. I will do it if the town manager or the board of commissioners tells the
Gotcha,
town manager
gotcha.
to tell me to do it. But I'm telling you as a professional that we've done a really good
Done
job.
everything we can.
And the belief that we think we can get it lower, we think that the new codes that were just adopted would get it lower. We have to wait until we get another evaluation. One of the entities that judges us, y'all, you can't even find. I used an outside source to locate their phone number. But they get to tell us something that we have no control over. I'm telling you, it's a rigged game.
It is.
Anyway, we're working on it. We're working on it as hard as we can. I've taken action since I've been here to try to get it reduced. We have upped our numbers. I don't know how close we are now. I have spent weeks on the phone debating with people about why we can't get it lower. You know what I mean? And, you know, that kind of thing. One time your building official wasn't qualified enough to get a low enough ISO rating. But boy, did he make it. But we got the best, I tell you, we're going to get the best rating we can possibly get when they come back and do an evaluation on us. Because we're going to get better there. But you couldn't get better before, but we have to wait till they decide to come do it. We can't make them come do it. We got to wait till they come do it. So we'll get better points there. We've got better points. We've got other things that give us better points. And we're waiting for, when's Mandy coming?
Mandy's going to be coming this summer, but you've got to get the ISO people's got to come back, and they ain't giving you a date to come back yet.
And what's ISO stand for?
It's the structural portion of it. What is that?
They
acronym?
came and done it, but it was all,
It's building code evaluation.
it was not correct at all. So Tim
Yeah,
called,
it's the building
Tim
evaluation.
questioned them on it, and so they've got to come back. They said they'd be willing to come back because it wasn't correct.
Yeah, they went to the girl that did our evaluation, said she had never been anywhere as great as us. So we were all excited and waiting. Turned out that apparently she quit her job. They had to go and
To her
physically
house.
get our stuff back, and it was incomplete. And so instead of giving us another evaluation, they gave us the same number we had before, and when I called them, they said they'd come back.
Who's they, who does this?
Good question. I can give you the suite number in New Jersey, but,
Yeah.
and I can let you see a satellite picture of a little building with one car at it. But they do
That-
everybody in the
that's-
country.
That's first. That's before we can get our recertification.
So it's a contract.
That is
Federal
first.
It's a
contract.
Then that
scam.
number
It's
goes
a
into
scam.
that.
They come and they do it, and they
CRS
say,
recertification.
your town is a 6. And so the insurance companies look at that when they sell insurance. They're selling that information to them, and we have to do it. We used to didn't even let them in the building. But then they convinced somebody to tie it to the CRC rating. And the CRC rating started picking it up. So now you have to capitulate to this booklet of ideas, and we do. We follow the booklet. That's not a problem. The building portion of it's not a problem. It's the numbering system for the CRS program that we are limited by the physical characters that are around us, but we're getting better. One of our biggest flaws was that we didn't have a freeboard.
Yes.
And we fixed that back in 2013. We worked on that. You worked on us with us, but that was one of the first physical barriers that got us a lot of numbers. One physical barrier we cannot get around is that when the guy that was here before me allowed him to build that building over there that belongs to us and didn't put impact windows in it, they won't give us but so good a rating because of that. They clearly told us that. Because he didn't follow the rules.
And it's not on the island. Is that the building you're talking
It's
about?
still not, it's part of the town. It's actually
Yeah,
town.
it's part of town.
Yeah. See, do you understand what I'm saying?
Satellite.
It's not a matter of, it's not a matter of, it's a matter of certain things. That's gonna change. When the code changes, that'll change for us.
You mean the EOC building?
The EOC building, yeah. It was part of an issue, the EOC building was. But I can't remember what some of
But
the.
all of the things that we require when somebody applies for a building permit, all the 3 elevation certificates people have to get. When they want to do more than 50%, we require elevation certificate, and they're angry, we have to require it.
That's because
That's
that's
part of
it.
this CRS
Yeah.
program, and we
And-
have to prove it. We don't just require it. We have to copy all that and prove it.
And let me tell you, if
The
you're.
V-Zone certificate, everything we require, it is required for that program.
Every permit on this beach has to be kept longer than anybody else keeps theirs. Other coastal communities have to do it too, but every permit has to be kept and documented at a duration much longer than, say, regular permits in Brunswick County or other areas. They can be disposed of, most of them, within 1 year. But we have to keep all of that for the CRC rate. And if it started in 1976, we have to have proof of it from 1976.
And we don't just have to have it. Every elevation certificate has to be correct. Surveyors make mistakes all the time. We have to catch it and make sure it's corrected because they get copies of every one of them. And it has to be pretty much 100%.
We do a very stringent and technical job. When you read these.
It takes time to do it.
The cyberbullying, and you read that, and it talks about how horrible we are because we made them get elevation certificates to do their
But we have
jobs.
this
It's
required.
because we're protecting y'all. We're trying to protect that CRS rating. Because right now, the best we can figure is that we might be able to drop it a point or two. But the worst that can happen is it goes where?
It could go up.
It could go up.
Yep.
And so, yeah.
The elevation certificates are not fun to review.
All right, Tim's
by the way.
working on
They're
that.
not. And
Moving right along.
Yeah.
They used to come and pick a few.
What was
It's
the
odd.
question,
The last
Tracy?
several years, it's every one of them has to be correct. So we have to, I have to review every one and
Hey,
make sure
Tim,
it's
I got one
correct.
question.
We're working on it. I've been actively working since day one. Ann can tell you, I know
Yes.
Vicki knows I have. I've been working on it actively day one. We really need our evaluations done. And I think it might, I don't promise it, but I think it might come down. Especially
We
the fact
can't
that
promise it.
we had 1,400 properties that got better too. So, might come
That's
down.
true too.
Policy 3.2.d, you need to add in, town zoning ordinances on that one too. That one mentions the town's flood damage prevention ordinance. It's similar to the other one you were asking about.
Shall take action? No, we don't. Yes, we do. Yeah, it does. It needs to, more stricter our ordinances are across the board, and the more references we have, that does protect it. That's good. That's a good catch.
Sorry, which one?
3.2
Point
point
D.
D.
These
These
dog-
aliens, town zoning ordinance like it did for 3.2.8.
I'll tell you, one of the biggest things that helped us for the CRS meeting was our hazard mitigation, our regional hazard mitigation plan. Our hazard mitigation plan was holding us back too. Man, they even look at how we prepare for hurricanes.
Yeah.
Of course they do.
3.2.g.
Yeah, I've got one even before that. 3.2.f.1, continue to look for ways to stabilize the inlet hazard areas. What is that? It's a recommended action. What are you,
I believe that was that's a carryover from the previous one, and I believe that primarily relates to the town's.
I would think the east end would be the dredging.
well, we're talking about stabilizing the
Yeah,
inlet
but
hazard
they
areas.
usually
so-
pump down there. It stabilizes it, because if we didn't,
So,
Oh, I know.
however way you're doing it, so that the inlet hazard area is not encroaching upon public property and endangering.
But isn't that what Alan was talking about the other night?
That's what this whole
That's
thing is
what-
about.
About the permanent
It's coming
erosion
all the
control.
way up to sailfish.
Yeah, so we're not keeping it stable, it's getting bigger. Right?
No. This isn't not the map.
That's
Not
what
the
I'm
map, but
yeah, it's not.
but this
I
is
agree
this
with
is
your interpretation. I think it needs to get smaller, but anyway.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I mean, we're saying stabilize, but it just got larger.
But I don't
it's
think they
it's
mean
meaning
that.
it's meaning not
The physical
He
thing like
knows that.
dredging or,
yes.
They're
The area
talking
is covered.
about- Right.
I'm just trying to understand more what that recommended action is going, what that, when we
Meaning
generate that,
that-
where's that gonna go? You know, what is,
Well, there are
It either
rules
means-
right now that we have to build under for those areas, like you're not supposed to
well,
have
no,
any
I know,
concrete
but
and
I'm
all
talking
that.
about continue to look for ways to stabilize the inlet hazard areas.
So that whether it's dredging and pumping sand, whatever it is, so that you are not having sand loss or property loss on either of your
Yeah,
inlets.
the inlet hazard area moves.
Oh.
That's why it's moved now. And it moved now, over time, it wasn't stable.
Mm-hmm.
And so it changed from one location to another. So now it's moved.
But
But-
it hasn't moved to sailfish. Come on.
I didn't say it moved to sailfish.
I know, but that map does.
I didn't say it moved to sailfish.
This.
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, and
Try
I
to
think
keep
we're
it from
talking,
moving.
I think we're
Is it-
talking about two different
It's
things.
the interpretation.
We're not talking about the CRC AEC. We're talking about literally the
Not the definition
That's
of
right.
an inlet hazard area versus a technique to
yeah.
stabilize it.
But if
Right?
it's
That's right.
confusing, I mean, it can.
They should call
It
it
can be
something
re-
besides a hazard
I mean,
area.
I think I understand Vicky now.
It
Yeah, but
can,
it needs
We're not
to
gonna
say-
do anything to stabilize that line, or one way or the other.
it can
It's gonna
be-
change.
Tell me how we can do that, you know?
We can't. Yeah.
it can be removed, and because 32G talks about
Yeah, just
you
take
know
it.
the town
Take it out.
having
That's exactly right.
all options, you know.
Well,
finally got
3.2g
what
is the
you
one
said.
that I have a problem
Yep,
with.
that's next.
Okay,
That's
yes.
the terminal groin, and I think we should say we do not support permanent erosion control structures, as we've said by voting it down and removing our permit.
You might wanna just,
Skip over that.
I,
no, you
Nope.
may wanna, listen, you may wanna leave the language in there, but exclude terminal groins. Because there's other things that do that we use every day.
The-
Such as
Bulkheads.
Every day.
that's right.
Every
The-
day.
on ocean shorelines?
Well, you could, yeah, or you could,
No.
I'm opposed to any of that on an ocean shoreline.
And that's what this one says, so.
A permanent structure?
We
permanent
talk about
erosion control
bulkheads
structure
somewhere
on
else, that's all
oceans?
over somewhere else.
So,
We didn't get the bulkheads, man.
there's two ways that this could be, and thank you for pointing out that the
I
word
yeah, you're right.
the word
You're right.
permanent can be stricken from this. The attempt was to allow this to some degree to be open-ended, so you're not pigeonholing yourself. But
Because sandbags, are sandbags allowed anymore?
yes, they are,
Yes.
but those are temporary.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
not
they-
considered
So,
permanent.
you know,
Well,
that's
just-
why I was thinking you could get rid of the word permanent.
I'd
and
like it
it's
to
still-
say the town does not support hardened structures on ocean shorelines.
I support that.
It's a good name.
Yeah, but I think you still could leave this sentence in here that says the town shall continue to evaluate.
I don't know.
And
So
consider
y'all think the terminal
authorized-
growing's dead? I don't think the terminal growing's dead. I think as soon as we'll get some shifting going on, it's gonna become a I think there's a group of people who are for the terminal growing.
It's
Yeah, there's
dead.
a different bunch
So
of
the
us.
town, as it stands
Here's the
now,
problem.
has,
Here's the problem. I don't know anybody's gonna go back through that process again. And if they do, me and you people won't be here.
I think it's dead in our lifetime.
Well, then, nobody should have a problem changing 3.2.g to say we don't support hardened structures on the ocean shorelines.
yes.
Take a vote.
The town, okay, let's take a vote. The town does not support, say it again?
The town
Hardened.
does not support hardened structures on the ocean shorelines.
Anyone not in favor of that statement?
I would prefer to leave it like it is.
There are too many knots. I don't know what we're voting for.
It-
And it would be clarified.
There's only one not.
Changing policy 3.2.g to read, the town does not support hardened structures on the ocean shorelines.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Put it up your hands. All opposed? How many was in favor? I only see 4
It
opposed.
looks like a tie.
It looks like a
Stand.
tie.
Well, if you don't
Oh,
vote,
we're
it's in
abstaining.
favor.
No, it isn't. How many in
It is.
favor?
Yes, it is.
Well, I didn't see.
Point of order.
Yeah.
You can sustain.
And if they sustain, then.
That's the same as
yes.
voting
Yes, that's right.
So they can sustain all they want, but.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. I said 4
So then the
negative.
motion would pass.
The motion would pass. But we never did decide how we get something in or out. That was my first day when I was asking. Is it majority or is it anonymous?
Unanimous?
Yes.
I just wanted
Thank you.
I just wanted a consensus on that because
So the consensus is that it gets changed.
so the board of commissioners would know that and the planning board would know that the committee had a consensus.
Yes.
That
So the
Which
town
we
does,
did.
the town does not support hardened structures on the ocean or on the ocean shoreline. Okay.
the committee doesn't.
So we're saying that, then they can change it whatever they want.
that's
but-
correct.
But they support that since they rejected the terminal growing.
You said you wanted consensus?
Consensus.
Against supporting
Yeah.
hardened
Okay.
structures.
That's right.
The,
And what was the
the,
vote?
They got it because there was a bunch of people that didn't vote, and that's the same as voting. Yes.
No, it's not the same.
So
vote,
let's
yes.
take that vote
All right,
again,
do it
because I
again.
didn't see those
Well,
numbers.
let's do it again.
All right,
Okay.
read it again.
Do it again.
Who supports changing it to this?
Well, let me, before we
Change
get
it to
to,
this.
can we get some discussion?
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm not in favor of a hardened structure, but I think we ought to make this, just keep this just open-ended so that we can continue to evaluate options.
I agree with that.
It doesn't say.
I'll agree with that.
It doesn't say
That's fine, I'm
we'll
for
do
it.
a terminal growing. I think we still need to continue evaluating options.
Evaluate
But I'm
and
not
may
in favor of
consider
terminal growing.
authorizing.
So you're
Okay,
putting
I
me in
can
a
launch
position.
into this whole thing.
Okay, Wordsmith, you can do it.
No. I'm just saying that I'm not in favor of hardened structures because there is impact.
I'm not in favor of them either, but I think we ought to leave it just like it is.
But it says right here, will not cause excessive public expenditure, environmental damage, or erosion to.
So that's too subjective. It's what's
What's
excessive.
subjective about that?
What is excessive public expenditure? Because they were going to spend how many
$30
millions
million
of dollars on the terminal growing, and they
That's
thought that was
excessive.
perfectly
Did
fine.
anybody ever know how much it was gonna cost for real?
34 million, right?
Over 30 years.
Yeah.
Over the life of the thing, it's 30, 40 years.
You put me in a position by the way you're stating this thing where it was like, we're not gonna look at anything else. We're
Right.
definitely against it. Don't be. and you don't-
Okay, so
What other, Tracy, let me ask you this.
Change.
What other hardened structure is there beside a terminal growing?
that you would support.
It's legally
Well,
It
allowed.
doesn't
It's
say
legally
hardened,
allowed.
it
I
says
mean,
permanent.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not
what,
supporting
South Carolina,
anything,
it's
but
a
I
whole
think you
different
don't, I don't think you just need to take this whole sentence
Yeah, I
out.
don't think you want to shut yourselves down to any time. What if they come up with something that's great and works and people actually like it?
Technology advances,
Right.
remember that.
That's fine. Then then they would have to change the land use plan. But at this point, that's where the town stands. based on what the commissioners
Well-
voted on,
They're
they do
against
not
terminal
support
growing.
a hardened structure.
The terminal growing's the only
This doesn't
part
mandate
that's
what
allowed
future
in North
commissioners
Carolina.
have to vote
Permanent
for.
erosion control
Regardless, I mean,
doesn't
so-
say
Yes, it is, but we're
hardened
trying to-
structure to me.
No.
It makes it difficult
Where's the
when
word
it's
hardened in
contrary.
there?
It's in my motion.
The fact that it
But
says
it's not in
permanent is
this
a problem.
policy. The word hardened structure is not in this policy.
How about if we just took
Says
permanent out of
permanent.
there?
See, I like taking permanent out.
Just take permanent out of
But
there.
I want to leave myself an option to, as technology changes,
Or whatever.
to look at other options.
I mean, I think to
Or
say,
just
we're
take
not
out
looking at
structures
erosion
and permanent,
control,
and then it
like
becomes
Steve
even
said.
more generic.
Okay, how about if we take out excessive? Hold on, guys.
Take out the whole darkened area there and just say, the town shall evaluate and may consider authorized methods
Well,
of
just-
shoreline stabilization and get rid of that in bold. Because we don't like permanent, we
We
don't
don't have
like,
anything.
I don't have
structures.
anything
Erosion control, take out structures and just say erosion control on ocean shorelines and leave the words as is. and-
No, he was reading that here in the sentence. It
Well,
said-
he's reading right at the top of the bullet part, he wants that out, permanent erosion.
The topic.
Yeah.
We're taking bold out of the topic, why'd you do that?
Well,
Oh,
okay.
Lord, somebody.
I just want to say that when the whole groin thing came up, initially I was in favor of it. And then I researched it, and I think you guys all know me, or a lot of you guys know me well enough that when Vicki researches, Vicki does deep dive research. And not just in North Carolina, not even just the East Coast, but I mean like worldwide. This is not we are not unique as much as we would like to. And I know Tim says it's the Holden Beach way. Yeah, but terminal groins have been all over it's been a technique that's been used all over the world. And I know what happens when you put one in there. You're going to have consequences in the downstream area of sand. And that is our whole beach. And I don't think that is worth the risk. So,
Not to mention the financial expenditure.
yeah.
Well, we have beat this thing to death, but can't we just word it so that we can continue to have ideas come forward, not
Right.
just stop
That's
it?
what we
Period.
voted, I thought, but.
So
How
I
about-
don't have a problem with that, but I
How
would like
about,
to
how about
say,
taking out authorized and put in future?
I'm okay with that.
The town shall evaluate and may consider future methods of shoreline stabilization, particularly in inlet hazard areas, provided the installation of these structures will not cause excessive public expenditure, environmental damage, and/or erosion. or
There you go.
Okay,
Oh,
wait.
yeah, I like
Okay,
that.
then I would insist that don't say adjoining, say other property.
That's fine too.
okay. So other property, and we take out permanent, we all agree on
Yep.
that, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So it'll
Permanent
just be
gets struck.
erosion control.
Yeah, take out permanent and leave erosion controls.
Structures and ocean.
I think you're still just talking on the shoreline here, you're not talking
Yes,
about
sir.
And
general
we're only
erosion
talking about on
control.
the shoreline, and we can take out structures too, because that
Yeah.
implies more physically, there may be other things.
Erosion, let's see.
Just erosion control on ocean shorelines.
That's
And just-
awesome right there. That's all we need.
Yeah.
And I would just say, provided implementation will not cause, rather than your,
All right.
instead of
Installation,
Implementation is a better
implement,
word.
because installation implies you're doing
Implying
something.
something
Implementation could be who knows what you might
okay,
be
what
doing.
about
to-
excessive?
It won't cause excessive
public expenditure? I think that's a judgment call.
It is.
That's
Tracy
that-
made that comment, and I agree with her. It's in the eyes and beauty of the beholder.
Yeah, really.
I mean,
And elected
In this
officials.
budget, it could be anything and not be excessive.
My dad thinks $7 for lunch is excessive.
Can we just take it out?
Yeah, you can take it out, yes.
Just take excessive
Just take
out.
out
Will
excessive?
not cause environmental damage and/or erosion on other property.
No,
Yeah.
because I think we need to say expenditure should be one of the things they're considering.
So will not cause public expenditure, environmental damage, and/or.
Everything costs
It's
public
gonna cost
expenditure.
It's gonna
public.
cost.
Some cost
Yeah,
some.
gotta-
Yeah, we need
You
to.
don't put
gotta
that
leave
in
it all
there
in
because
if you
the
leave it.
expenditure is the whole
Once
nut.
you just take the whole thing about expenditure out, it says these structures
You
will
could
not
put,
cause environmental damage or erosion to other property.
you could put will not cause undue
No,
public
be-
expenditures.
Yeah, I want to put I want to leave expenditures in there because it should be a consideration when they're deciding on what they want to do, along with environmental damage and
Yep.
erosion. I mean, the cost should be a
It allows people to
consideration.
vote
Yep.
on what they consider excessive.
Precisely.
But you can't
Yes.
say no public expenditure,
Yes.
because there will be some.
If you leave it in there, if you don't leave it in
Well, I-
there, then
Yeah, I
can't see
disagree. I
excessive
disagree.
expenditures.
That's, the expenditure's the whole thing. Can we afford it? To say,
No,
it's
that's
very
not the whole
redundant.
thing. That's
About-
like,
It's a very
Instead of
redundant
excessive,
sentence right
unapproved.
there. Excessive.
Not
Unapproved.
cost
expenditure.
unapproved public
It's all
expenditure.
about expenditure.
Does that make
That's the
better
first thing
sense?
you'll look at. Can we afford it? If they're not, then they shouldn't be here. They should be in charge of our money. If they're gonna say, oh, we don't care what it costs, let's just build it.
Well, that's what the last board was doing.
Well, and they're not here.
I don't know that they fully understand.
Okay, so let's circle back here. It is going to be erosion control on ocean shorelines, correct?
Right.
Yes.
Okay. The town shall evaluate and may consider,
excuse me.
are we
Future
keeping
methods.
authorized methods?
Future.
Or is it future?
Future.
Okay, thank you. Future methods
Of shoreline.
of shoreline stabilization, particularly in inlet hazard areas, provided the is this implementation
Of these,
structures will not cause.
It doesn't have to be a structure.
No, I wouldn't say structure.
That's why I said implementation, because it could just be
Okay,
a process.
Provided implementation.
Can we just stop after stabilization and get rid of all the particular inlet areas, provide the structure, blah, blah, just say the town shall evaluate and may consider future methods of shoreline stabilization, period.
Yeah.
Leaves it very open-ended.
Yeah. I'm good with that.
I'm okay.
I'm good with that.
Yep. That's why there's boards and elected officials.
Exactly. I mean, they should be considering the expenditure, the environment, and when they go and find something, they're gonna have to
Well,
consider all
there's
those
enough other
things.
guidance in here that talks about
Yep.
environmental input, without really having to add it to everything.
Everybody okay with that? Leave just stopping after stabilization?
I'm
The
good
town
with that.
shall evaluate and may consider future methods of shoreline stabilization.
Got it.
perfect.
I agree with
Okay.
that.
Got that, Justin?
Got it, guys.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, anything else on 19?
It is very important.
Yes. No, it's
Yeah,
important.
that was a
Debate.
biggie.
I've got one at the bottom of the page, relocation of structures. To add a recommended action, ways to make this easier and less costly.
Can they make moving houses?
Right. Is there anything we can do, whether that is, I mean, right now, it's hard. I mean, you've got to go to Board of Adjustment.
Yeah.
No. Only if it comes up, stays on the beach.
Yeah, if you're moving it, you can go right away, but we don't care.
I'm looking at ways that if you had erosion, say down on the east end, and those houses wanted to move, how can we make that easier?
There's
for them?
provisions already that they can move them back to a vacant lot and leave them there until they can get the process done. It's already there.
Okay.
They don't have to leave them there for them to fall down in the water while they go through the process. Those provisions are already in place. As a matter of fact, I think one of them is a state provision that allows you to move to a vacant lot if you get permission, and it can stay there while the process is being done. That is actually it's either a FEMA thing or a CAMA thing. It's somewhere.
It's not CAMA.
Huh?
It's not CAMA.
It's a provision somewhere. You don't have to let the building stay there and fall down into the water
So-
while you're going through a
Waiting
permitting
on it.
process.
We
Yeah.
let them do that.
I can go find it. But
There's a need to be a bulletin or something prepared. You know, is there information on this that's readily available?
Well, our Board of Adjustments require it, so I don't know how we can change that in this.
Well, you
It's
could
in
change
the-
your ordinance.
It's in the local ordinance, I mean,
Yeah.
Process works.
Okay.
yeah.
And here's why it works. It allows the neighboring properties to have input into what's coming next to
Yeah.
them. You know what I mean? As far as the structure now, whether it has bearing or not is unknown. But the process works. We've had it done 2 or 3, maybe 4 times since I've been here. I think it's a very good process.
It's a conditional use permit.
Yeah, it's just, people, I'm sure it's got its drawbacks, that it's not perfect, but
The neighboring properties get to have an input of whether you're moving a house there?
Well,
Yeah.
if it's conditional use, it's
Why would they
standing.
get that? If you were building a house, they don't get to have a say, do they?
I guess so, but the ordinance doesn't,
No.
The ordinance doesn't say if you build a new house that you,
Yeah, I know, so that's contradictory. Why would they get a say if I'm moving my house versus building it from scratch? It's none of their business.
have you seen some of these houses they're moving?
Yeah.
So what? I could build a little house too, and they wouldn't have a say in it.
But your little house that you're building would be built to code.
Yes.
Yes.
Everything
When
about
you
it would
move
be new.
But you have to move it, you have to build a code when you move it.
No, you don't.
No.
No, you don't.
Okay, so
have
that's a
to set
difference.
it up
That's
to
a
code.
difference.
Here's the difference. Only the foundation portion has to be brought up to code.
That's
The
right.
rest of the house can blow all over the beach.
That's
Okay.
right.
Okay, so that's
And have
that's a
electrical issues and everything
rational
else.
reason of why.
Well, that the biggest provision is that you can move a house that was built pre-firm before 1969, okay, and it didn't have to meet any codes. You know what I mean? It may be in some sort of a dilapidated condition, not far enough to be condemned, and the only thing they have to do is tie it down to the foundation. Well, the rest of it might not be tied down. You know what I mean? And I don't know about you, but I would be the first one to say, I'm against it unless they do something to bring it into compliance. You know what I mean? Most of them do when they get it moved, but you know what I mean? But that's a good example. There's others. That's a good
Hey,
example.
somebody move a house next to you and the roof isn't strapped down.
Well, how about this? How about somebody decides to move that one right over there that's covered in asbestos siding? You want that next to your house? You know what I mean? I mean, there's a reason why
Okay.
older homes need to let the neighbors have some say so. It works. It works. Yeah.
It
You're
would-
saying that if they're moving it back, then they don't have to go through that until it's already moved?
No, what I'm saying is there's a provision that allows them to take that house out of danger and put it somewhere
Temporarily.
temporarily
Okay.
It's two different-
until you go through the process of seeing whether you can move it somewhere. You got to take it away. You don't have to just let it fall in the ocean or abandon it, because there's a certain point, like Captain Jack's, where it
Yeah,
becomes
yeah,
it ends up in the public trust water, and it's a hard sell after that in any direction. Because it's not really theirs, it belongs to me now. I live in Ash, and it's in my water. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Rules are hard to apply.
Okay, so let's skip that.
Yeah.
You withdraw that recommendation? Withdrawn.
All right.
20.
All right.
Believe me, I would love to do away with anything you can do away with it.
20.
But that one works.
3.2.L, minimize potential fire damage. This is something near and dear to all of our hearts. So my question is how? So I would like to see some kind of recommendation that might include adding sprinkler systems to certain size houses or whatever we can do.
Okay.
Some kind of recommendation on that.
Overhead.
That doesn't include building a new water tower.
Okay.
Didn't we have a conversation about that at planning and zoning, that you can't recommend, you can't make just certain group have sprinklers?
Tim knows. Tell us, Tim.
Can't do it.
So, okay, so that's a bad idea, but there must be something of how we can support that.
You can support it. You can. What I would do is say the town encourages state legislature to write rules or something that would allow for the incorporation of sprinklers in the large homes or something to that effect. You might want to think about that wording, but that's what you're looking for. You're
Got
looking
that,
for.
Wes?
Well, what
The
is
town
the point
encourages-
of the large home, excuse me? The point of the large home, if a 800 square foot home burns, both sides are going to be, they're both going to be affected.
What's the hand?
So there's other things that can be done. I think you could put in an action here for the planning board to explore options for, or provisions for reducing future fire damage. I mean, there's landscaping requirements. There's a whole host of things that you guys can look at.
Yeah, put something in there. There should be some action.
If that's what you're interested
Recommendation.
in.
A water tower.
There are
is attached
building code
You hush.
restrictions and some other things but
to it.
Mine too.
so yes, I'll put in an action.
You can encourage building houses out of non-combustible material.
That too.
Like
That one
more
house-
cement.
Remember that
Like
blue
five
one that
more
built,
cement,
that fell,
right?
that by
Yeah.
deal, that
Yeah.
blue one that burned down, they built it out of concrete?
Concrete, that's
Yep,
right.
yep. The
Yeah.
That's
replacement.
not going anywhere, is it?
It will burn.
It
It
will.
will burn just like the one next to it. I promise you. Yeah, we heard about the flame-proof houses.
Anything else on 20?
Oh, I gotta get back in focus here.
I'm back to 3.2.p,
Mm-hmm.
Then we're stabilizing that inlet.
Well, that's the dredging.
That's the
that we're
dredging.
fighting for.
Yes.
It's like-
That's the dredging.
How about the slow down?
Are y'all,
Go ahead.
3.2.M?
P.
P.
Yeah, but why do we skip over M? You like it? You like it?
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Do you have something to contribute?
I bet he does.
What's on your mind?
No, just leave it alone. If I think about what I want to do, we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll just leave it alone. Didn't make them. Go back to P.
So
Okay.
what's your issue with P?
About the stabilize. I want to define stabilize.
Okay.
To
not-
renourish? Is that really what we're talking about here? Is that what you're
I
trying to
don't
say?
think it's renourish.
It's dredging, right? That you're not renourishing.
I think you're
dredging the inlet.
stabilizing,
The accessibility,
Well, the
yeah,
depth.
and flow,
Right, so we can get through that.
all those things.
right?
They're gonna do it whether you put it in or not.
I know. That's one thing, is that it's not even ours. It's,
Yeah, but we encourage it.
Yeah, we
That's what they're
support
saying.
that.
They're
We support
but,
it.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we're
We are.
not encouraging wider, deeper. You know, we have, our engineers said we've got real concerns about wider, deeper. They're doing it anyway, but,
They're not making it wider, are
yeah.
they? Well,
Sort of naturally,
not
when
the
you,
beach, but the,
No, the inlet.
yeah, well, you
And
got a
the
boat, you
concern-
don't mind it being wider.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but the impact of, for the erosion to quote stabilize it,
Once
it's
that
bad.
east end lets loose, everybody will be praying for the terminal green.
I'll tell you what, there was a
It
whole
starts
bunch
moving.
of, there was a whole bunch of boaters in here that probably disagreed with you that came to meetings and brought up the fact that it needed to be dredged.
Amen.
And that's a big part of the local economy. And we got a lot of fishermen, charter fishermen right here on this island,
Yeah.
some that live here.
Well,
Because that's how the water gets out of the waterway when we get an
Into the
abundant
ocean.
amount of rain.
or
20,
hurricanes.
Yeah, for the
That's the
hurricanes, it
outflow of
goes
a
out through the inlet. It's
So
not
instead
deep
of-
enough. We're
Stable-
flooding into marsh like we got
Right.
in Matthew.
No.
Stabilize would insinuate also that
the
it
water
is not
intaken by
encroaching
lower level.
either.
Right.
Instead of stabilize, could we say preserve?
Sure.
Does that make
Well-
more sense? Stabilize makes it sound like it's gonna be fixed.
When you're preserving something,
Yeah,
you
they're
know,
doing
this
it.
is an
I
volatile
mean, like
state.
concrete is
You
stabilized.
don't want to preserve it when it's here, you want to preserve it when it's there.
Well, the inlet's moving.
Yes.
The inlet moves, that's why your inlet hazard line moves.
With the storm, there is.
And so you've encouraged, you're trying to keep your inlet hazard line moving, not to move, right? That's what we did way back here. And now you're saying you don't want to stabilize the inlet, which would keep it moving, from moving.
I want to understand
You two are complex.
stabilize. I want to understand what that word is connoting and,
It just, I mean, we can remove stabilize, but you know, the Corps has interest, as do recreational boaters and the state's shallow draft inlet program to make sure that those inlets remain passable, and stabilizing them essentially is one of the things they do. Now, it can be modified stabilize to say ensure that the inlet remains passable. I'm not sure with the wording just off the top of my head here right now, but I mean, it is not insinuating that it is going to be a terminal groin.
yeah, I wasn't really worried. I mean, and navigability is important.
Navigability,
Yeah.
But, so I just want to be, we're spending a lot of time and about to spend a lot of money on this inlet
Well,
here.
can you
And we
say-
continue to, and I just want to make sure we have this correct.
Can you say it strongly supports the effort of the U.S. Army Corps to keep the Lockwood Folly Inlet navigable?
Yeah?
Sure.
Functional?
Stable.
Stable.
Stable
I think
is the word.
Stabilize, it means keep it like it's supposed to be.
Right.
To hold stable, firm, or steadfast. Unfluctuating level or quantity.
But
The
really,
government will try to stabilize the inlet.
Really, what we want to do is keep the Lockwood Folly Inlet navigable for boats, all right? So can't we just put that, I mean, isn't that really what we want, is to, so that, that's why you want it deeper or wider or whatever, so the boats can get through.
What's wrong with the word stabilize?
Because it's not clear exactly
What you're trying to do, are you making it deeper, are you making it wider?
Yes.
Are you trying to keep it from moving?
Right, because when it does, if it does kick in to move, that's gonna be,
That's when it's gonna get wider.
right.
And right
In
now,
your
it's
direction.
unstable,
Right,
right?
to be up
And
at,
now it ain't stable.
Rich's Inlet started moving.
Right. So, I mean, is it realistic to think that we could stabilize it?
Well, but you know, that's what all the beaches have been trying to do for now 60 years. So, I mean, that cat's out of the bag on that. You know, the shallow inlet dredging program, I mean, the Corps keeps and monitors these inlets. You know, we can get rid of stabilize, you know, that there's also the notion here that potentially in other beach towns when they use this shallow inlet program, they use some of that sand to renourish the beach, which has been
Oh, do we know about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do it. Happens here all the time.
But you know, the
lost
wider
it.
deeper project, that's the county, that's not even the state, so,
Um,
of the Corps of
But
Engineers,
the
that's using
Corps
a
will-
grant from the,
The Corps will often dredge the inlet and put the sand on the beach. They often do that. They've done that 3 or 4 times since I've been here. The east end benefits from the dredging.
correct, about every other year is when that happens. But this coming turn that should be coming to us is not. So,
So I think if the issue is maintaining navigable waters through the inlet, then that's what it needs to say.
That's a good point.
We only want them to stabilize it on the years they give us that.
I mean, they're not stabilizing.
5 on that.
That's what I heard.
That's what I heard. So what I heard is, we're mad
Yeah,
because they won't let us have the sand on our
So
river. And so we just don't care whether it's stabilized or not. I'm kidding.
the town strongly supports the efforts of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to ensure the Lockwood Folly Inlet remains navigable.
yes.
Yes.
Good, I like it.
Yeah, sounds good.
They should.
I say
It's
anything,
always
but I like
been
it.
that they got it every other year,
Or has it always been?
as far as I can remember.
No, we get it every year, they've never gotten it.
every other year.
Every other year.
But they didn't get it the other years.
So now we're not, so now we got to give up some years to pay
All
it
right,
back.
what else you got, Vicki?
Okay,
Question, we're talking about Lockwood Folly Inlet, we don't care about Shallow Inlet
that's already, agreed to, that it goes
to Ocean Island?
to Ocean Island.
Okay.
Our beaches grow in that direction, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We accept
Kinda,
that.
sorta.
They grow in one direction.
Well, you need to look at our
North to south.
last beach survey.
I'd love to.
Okay, bulldozing, is this even allowed?
Yes.
On other
They use
beaches, I've
bulldozing
seen it on other
Central
beaches.
Reach.
Excuse
Within
me,
Central
it was
Reach.
out
Central
there
Reach had
with
bulldozers out there.
$16 million worth
Yeah.
of sand
Big
out
time.
there. I saw bulldozers every day.
And
Okay, but wait, okay,
Hurricane
what you're
Floyd, we
referring
had a
to is
bulldozer out
whenever
there.
you have an emergency situation, you do sand pushing, correct?
Right.
Yes.
Not
Well, Lisa
necessarily
said that.
bulldozing.
Well, they do, like, well, I saw them bury a whale. On Wrightsville Beach, had a whale watch out there, and they dug this dune out,
What if-
pushed the whale in the dune,
Yeah,
and then put the sand over the
Wouldn't
top
that be an
of it with the
emergency
bulldozer.
situation?
I'd have to,
You're not
yeah.
meaning bulldozing, you're meaning sand
I'd have to
pushing.
pull up the AEC 7H guidelines, but which I should have brought
That's
them.
bigger
They
than a whale.
they have a provision on bulldozing,
That's bigger
and
than a whale.
so if you do want to allow it, but you want to make sure you're in accordance with camera rules, you can
Right.
say shall be discouraged in non-emergency, or you
My
can
question
say
is,
shall
okay.
be in accordance with CAMA 7H guidelines.
There you go.
Because I can't go out there right now and push up a dune.
That's not an emergency.
I would need to pull those regulations to
Okay.
ensure, but I don't.
I wouldn't try it.
Yes, I would not try it.
Without a
Keep that bulldozer
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
garage.
how about that?
Let's be clear. I wouldn't try it.
All right, anything else on 20?
It wouldn't be stable.
Going once. Touche.
2 hours.
21. So, only thing I had on 21 is all these things, public infrastructure, beach reentry, debris pickup, blah, blah. Should we add another bullet that says post-storm review / lessons learned? Every storm they should,
I have that
and maybe
too
they
as a
do
recommended
already.
action.
Under that one or somewhere else?
I had it down here kind of at the end, that as a recommended action, that we need to learn from and document those storms, and that following each major storm or event requiring an evacuation, or storms impacting the island rated Category 2 or higher, Matthew, the town shall complete and publish an after-action report, include public input and areas for improvement and lessons learned.
Yeah, I like hers better.
Okay.
I have a problem with the order in which these
Okay.
bullets are in here. They're just, these bullets.
Which one's on 3?
320 and 321, they're bullets.
Oh,
They're
okay.
almost backwards.
I mean,
Okay.
they're just out of.
They're way out, you gotta do a damage assessment before you're ever gonna issue a building permit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you've
You're gonna
got
be
to,
doing the.
Evacuate
It's
first.
actually backwards, I'm
Yeah.
telling you, in
Yeah.
our plan, it's actually backwards from our plan, the whole thing. Our plan starts with public health, safety, and welfare, then you have the recovery task force, that's the actual plan, it's backwards, it's in the plan. The last thing you're gonna do is issue building permits.
Yeah.
Could you provide them with the order that they should be in?
Yeah, there's a book in my office, I'll give it to you.
You probably take this list and just turn it upside down, if you're right.
I'm telling you, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Well, the beach reentry should be after they do infrastructure repair and replacement.
Yeah, I'm
no.
thinking,
Restoration for public utilities and service should be before that,
we gotta pick up the debris before you get in here.
right?
You gotta be a damage assessment done before you
Before
come
that.
in. That's almost done immediately, there's 2 of them.
There's 2 levels of debris.
There's evacuation, 2 levels of damage, there's evacuation procedures that actually do before that. And this is like the reverse of it.
I think the public utilities and services should be.
Wait a minute. Are we looking at the list on 32S or?
Yeah, S, this is what we're
20.
talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
It starts on
I thought you were
100
talking
days
about.
over.
Yes. All right. That can be modified.
I'll give you the sequence,
Okay.
it's in the book, I'll give it to you. I'll email it to you.
And then that wording, Vicky, I can put that at the end. Do you mind sharing that with me? Thank you. Thank you, sir. Oh! Close.
I almost made a basket.
She was
Okay.
trying to hit that hole, you wouldn't have been close.
So, do we have any other questions or concerns on 21 and 22? Okay.
We never did find bulkheads. We've been all the way through this thing. We haven't talked about bulkheads
I
yet.
saw bulkheads
They're in
somewhere.
here.
They are in there.
I don't remember what page.
I definitely read them. Might not have been there on me.
What's wrong with bulkheads?
I just got through it. I didn't say anything wrong with
I
it.
can talk about schedule.
It's just weird how it was such an important thing when I was reading it. Now I can't even find it.
3.1F.
There you go.
You found it?
Yeah, the reason I missed over it was because we spent time on 31E, I guess. And
Okay.
And you got an issue with it, or?
Well, there was more about this because if you're repairing a bulkhead, you're exempt from a camera permit, I believe.
But you still have to get an exemption.
But you have to get the exemption.
You have
if
to
are
obtain an
exempt.
exemption. Mhm.
Have to come to you and get an exemption. That was
They actually
important.
go to Wilmington.
Still gotta get a building permit.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but the camera permit was a big surprise to me that you didn't have to have one.
You still apply and you get an exemption because when you apply, you have to submit materials list that has to be looked at and then the exemption's issued and they bring it in to apply for the building permit. Just like if you were getting a permit, except it didn't cost. Still have to meet on site, still have to look at it.
Okay.
So did you have changes you wanted to add?
No, ma'am. It's in here somewhere that it's there for repairs, but I don't know what it is.
And then on the maps, we noted that the inlet hazard areas are changing. Right? I had a question on the map that was the second map where you have SA, semicolon, HQW, and SD. Could you explain what those are?
Which map? Sorry.
It's
Which
this
map?
one. It's
Surface water.
surface water classification.
Oh, for some reason, yes, SA. So these are designations by DEQ, and it's spelled out in the chapter as well, specifically. Basically, what it means is this is the highest and best use of that particular water that the state has to mandate certain water quality standards. For example, for an SB, primary saltwater recreation, that means you have skin contact with the water. If it goes below a certain threshold, that potentially could become a swamp water or another type of water that then also allows for increased degradation because the nutrient load can be higher. Same thing with the SA high HQW, which is high quality water for saltwater fishing.
Okay.
Or swimming in a canal.
It's actually fairly complicated. I don't know how they keep it straight, but
Okay. So that was chapter 3, right?
yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Does anybody have anything else on that? Okay, I had just some general questions. On our schedule, is there any way that we can adjust this so that we don't lag months? Because I find that it kind of breaks our flow.
What? So
You're gonna have,
part of the reason why we did that is because the project was over 2 fiscal years, and the town wanted to expend the money over 2 fiscal years. I agree. I typically would like to go month to month.
Yeah, I agree.
But I am thinking we've got on here that we're going to try to meet in February.
Right.
But let me pull the schedule. But then we're not until April.
Yeah, that's bad.
We just skip one, right?
I'm going.
It's not like
And then we
November,
May.
December,
Yeah, and then we skip May. Then we
and
skip
June,
July.
July.
I mean, we're going to end up having the whole thing drafted in this fiscal year, which is fine.
Yeah, so I
but
think we should try to wrap it up earlier rather than later.
Everybody's dispersed so much in the summer.
Can we,
Yeah, so can we at least have move March? Add March, I mean?
I think so. Let's see.
it was a $30,000 contract.
Yes.
Well, it doesn't matter because all the rest of it's in this year, so it doesn't matter if we move things and not
Other
skip
than
months.
proportionality.
Starts
Is that
July
a fiscal
1.
year?
It starts July 1, so we
Oh,
just have to
it's not a fiscal
withhold.
year.
We would just have to withhold invoices until the new fiscal year. But that's why it's done. That's why it's that way.
Accrual accounting would maybe say percentage of completion would actually force you to.
Yeah, that's right. So
No, the answer.
I think you are
can we,
not in a position to do that.
Yeah.
yes, ideally,
I'm going to tell you, you're not in a position to do that. You're spending my budget now and
Yeah.
dictating how that process.
could we go
in my-
forward and ask for a budget amendment?
I think you could. There was never, the money that was in there, I had to protect when they were cutting it. Because you're usually in there for professional services. It just so happens that we had that much money in there when we decided to make this move. And so they agreed to it based on the fact that there was $20,000 in there for this year, and then the remaining $10,000 we would budget for the following year. We've even made plans already in the current budget for that. But if the board, if y'all want me to go to the board and ask the board to possibly do a budget amendment and come up with an extra $10,000 so it can be finished in this year, and if Wes and them are willing to put in the time and shorten that timeline, then I don't have a problem doing it. But I don't think until we have that information that you can say you want to, I can relay
It's
it.
you're probably talking about less than $5,000.
Yeah, I can't do
which
it
was-
before it was there.
I don't even know, has to go back, does that have to go back?
I don't understand what you mean, talking less than $5,000.
I thought David had the authority.
No, it's 10 grand. The
Yeah,
total
10
contract's
10 grand. It's 20 in this fiscal and 10
I know,
in the next.
but you're talking about switching maybe as much as 4,000 or 5,000 from fiscal next year to this
No,
year.
he's saying they're moving 10.
No, they wouldn't move all, you're not gonna get all done
We
by.
won't get it all done.
They aren't
but-
gonna get it all done by,
Yeah.
if you look at the schedule, you're only gonna move up and
Oh, I see what you're saying.
But-
They're not gonna get it all
So-
done, even
so
if we moved it up to
if-
that
if-
in March.
If it's okay with this group, we're slated,
Wait, I can't hear
we're,
you
we're,
guys.
we're slated to meet in February.
Yep.
So, which will be next month. And then at that time, let's just, you guys figure out what you want to do.
Okay.
We will be prepared if we need to deliver you another chapter in March.
Okay.
Is that
And
fine?
how do we have to figure that out then?
Rhonda, are you gonna have the
Tim
time
have
to
to
do,
go?
you gonna
I
have the
don't
time
know.
to rack up these minutes
I don't know.
and spend the time to do this?
Because we already got one meeting. We got 2 land use plan meetings in February. And we've got a camel,
And we got a
a
planning board,
CRC meeting in
and we
February
got a
too.
parking committee meeting.
What do you mean we have 2 land
This
use?
is from my last chapter.
It looks like February the 26th, and we just added February the 7th, didn't we?
Yes.
February
The
7th
community
is-
meeting,
is-
you mean?
Yeah, so we don't have a meeting.
what's planning and zoning on the 12th.
Planning and zoning in February, March, planning and
Yeah, but we're
zoning.
talking about, we'd be doing March,
Constantly meeting all day, every day.
April.
I think that has to take priority. Good job.
Well, are you saying that the problem is writing the minutes? So,
Oh,
You have a
it,
full-time job.
because
Yeah.
if you need some help with that, Vicky and I would,
Can't do it,
not allowed.
Not
not allowed to do it.
Oh.
Gotta be certified
I
clerk.
have to do it.
Okay,
Leave it like it is.
I
also
also
work
get finished up
full-time.
faster.
Well, look, Vicki, I know you don't wanna leave it like it is, but we're trying to do full-time jobs
I know you
here.
are, I know. I think this is part of your job. You're doing it here on your workday. I appreciate it.
We had to postpone the inspections today because I've had meetings and trying to take care of outside other stuff. Everything can't be like this. She is absolutely spending days doing minutes, and this ain't the only meeting we have. And so my job as a director is to manage my budget and my staff. And I'm telling you that we can do it, and we probably will end up having to do it.
Well, will you just investigate it? I think it would be more efficient, and we would just not
I would
have
love
it
to
done.
be able to do it at the fastest pace possible. I would love to be able to do
We've
it.
asked.
And we probably end up going to do it.
We haven't.
We're probably going to end up having to do it.
Are we gonna do this just for convenience?
That's what we have to go
Let's
with.
get this down.
Better for us to stay
not have
focused.
3
Why?
months between
Why
meetings.
better?
Well, we just had 3 months between meetings.
Yeah,
And you
And
remember what we did 3
Yes,
months ago?
I
It's
went
just
over
that we
it.
have
I certainly did.
jobs to go to.
It's just more efficient to be
And it takes
consistent.
What knew all
time
this going
from my,
into this?
from
To
me
me, at my age, 30 and 60
to
days,
read and study and do what we're doing.
once it's past 24 hours.
Okay, is there anything further? Any other
I
questions?
mean, we've had this schedule before us since last fall, and
I know, and I didn't really understand the implications before we got going with it.
Building inspection.
it doesn't bother me.
I also had a question, Wes, why does this go to on our schedule here, it goes to we do planning board approval, and then it says DCM review.
Yes, that's the state's mandatory requirement. Once the planning board gives it, once you all are comfortable for it, it's sent to Division of Coastal Management. They check that the document has all the required 7B requirements. And they send it out to other agencies. I haven't had any comments received back from them. Then it goes to elected officials to be adopted before getting ultimately approved by not CRC, but a CRC rep.
Ask the question.
So then, if our commissioners make recommendations, is that?
Then I will tell, if they make any recommendations that are not consistent with the state policy planning guidelines, I would advise the elected officials that they can't, for example, take out it's not that there's policy content, it's, sections or things like that I don't suspect that they're gonna change. But they might, but we'll have that discussion at that time.
Okay, it just wouldn't be more.
You can call the district planner and
I
ask
hate
him
to
why.
send things- I
Does
hate
it have to
send
go
things-
back to the state after the commissioners make any changes?
If there's changes which would potentially jeopardize
What's the rush?
the
I'm sorry.
the plan not meeting the 7B requirements, yes. But
Point of order, Amy.
if they make recommendations that are in,
It would-
violation of those requirements,
You would tell them.
I would
so-
tell them,
So
yes.
chances
It
are
wouldn't,
it wouldn't.
it wouldn't be
That's right.
more, it wouldn't be more prudent for it to go before the Board of Commissioners and get them to give a blessing before we send it off for.
I would love to do
DCM.
that, but the powers that be have said that this is the way that it's got to go.
Yeah.
I agree, and I'll tell you this: when it goes to that DCM review, they'll tell you it's 75 days,
Oh,
but
well, that's
it'll
right.
be 150 days, and I will have sent 17 emails off and however many phone calls before we get it back. So
When I go to the next CRC meeting for public comment, I'm gonna ask the question why it's done that way.
yes.
Well, there's nothing to
You know what
prohibit
I'm
them from
asking, right?
seeing this
Exactly what I'm
ahead of
asking.
time.
I'm
Okay.
not comfortable with
As soon as
I'm not
that's
comfortable with
right.
it not going before the board
As
before it
soo-
goes out.
as soon
No,
as
I'm
it-
with you.
As soon as the planning board gives it its blessing, it will do two things. It will be delivered to the Board of Commissioners, and I'll also drop off the required copies at DCM for them to do their
Okay,
review.
okay, well, that's fine.
Oh, so you're doing it concurrently?
Yes. So, but
Oh,
now
okay.
we just can't proceed with adoption until we get the
Right.
go ahead from
Okay.
DCM.
From DCM. Once they say, yeah, it meets all the requirements, then we proceed with adoption. We do the public hearing
So
notification.
then if we have a planning and zoning item that occurs, like say in December, and this is still in this, we have to refer back to this document?
That's correct. Not until it's adopted
Yeah.
locally.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Now, you can look at it and say, hey, this
We're
said
gonna-
this,
we're gonna
but it does
defer
not.
discussion of this until
But
February
it does
meeting,
not. Yeah.
until
Yeah,
this is adopted, because we don't.
You can proceed with work on recommended actions all you want before it's adopted, but
That's what I think.
yeah.
I think where we're confused here is that we can send a copy of it to the Board of Commissioners. It
Yeah.
goes to DCM, like he's saying,
Yep.
they're just like Holden Beach Building Inspections Department. It takes them 20 years to do something. So we end up with plenty of time to alter it as much as we want before they, ever decide to look at it. So there we go. Because they're just like we are.
Yeah, I mean, we made substantial modifications with the elected officials for a number of the communities, Sunset Beach, but none of those were in violation of the 7B planning guidelines.
All
So
I could
That's
stomach.
what I had.
Okay.
So when was the 2009 plan?
started probably 2005.
Okay, so this document may say 2020 land use plan?
Well,
when it
hopefully not,
finally is-
but you'd be surprised.
Yeah,
I mean,
could.
this is the quickest
Come
part
on.
of it
Okay,
is
that's why
actually
I was
getting
curious,
it
'cause I said
drafted, which
it's
is
already
mind-boggling.
not going to be 2018 land use plan.
I don't know, how many have they done under this new criteria where it goes to staff instead of,
I've done at least 6 of them.
how long did it take, Wes?
A long time.
Because the only ones I've done all went to
What,
DCM.
once it gets out of the planning board, you can almost guarantee that it's going to be almost 6 months until you get it adopted locally. But that's also, considering your elected officials likely want to have it for 2 meetings.
Yeah.
And maybe they want to have another special meeting, so, that's 2 months right there. And rightfully so, the elected officials should review it as long as they need to.
I'm not looking at it from a trying to get it done sooner. I'm just wondering, I feel kind of weird sending something from the planning board to the state without it being blessed by, because we're an advisory.
It's only one official that gets it.
Okay.
It's not like
Yeah, you don't have time.
it's
Okay.
it's so, but it will be sent to the elected officials as soon as the planning board gives it its blessing. So,
Okay, I had
don't
a couple more things real quick, guys. This is not on our agenda, but I'm putting it under there as an announcement. We had talked about this C1 that we, at our last P&Z meeting, we wanted to do we'll talk about this at our meeting on the 12th. but we talked about we wanted to do a moratorium on C1. After further study and Tim and I discussing, we have decided that we're not going to do that. We're actually just going to bring some recommendations and just actually do the text amendment at our meeting and recommend it go forward that way. And if you have any questions, you can talk to me about it. You have anything to add?
Yeah,
Right,
I'll do a presentation as a text amendment with the changes, and then y'all can make the changes if you want to while we're there. And then we can take that on to the Board of Commissioners for a text amendment.
As opposed to doing a moratorium.
Yeah, as opposed to doing a moratorium.
So you're being commercial.
Pardon me?
Yeah,
Commercial one.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's very lax. It doesn't even follow our CAMA plan. So
Right.
It doesn't
And-
follow that plan, the old one.
Okay.
It's not on our agenda, I just wanted to throw that out too because of our budget exchange, I want to let you know. Next P&Z meeting is February 12th, 2 o'clock p.m. We'll talk about the C1 stuff. And our next land use plan meeting is February 26th at 2. And then I had one more question for you, Wes.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it possible to get the revised drafts of what we've done so far? Do you do that as we go along?
When we talk about this, you get one full copy. That way it reduces, there'll be too many copies going on. Get one full copy at the end, and that's how we'll handle it.
But,
One full copy will come to me. I'll disperse it.
okay.
I don't know if you wanted to mention this or not, but we are working on the big house issues.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to keep in mind that that needs to fall in here somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Good
I've
point.
got that down there, big houses,
It needs to be, we need to reference that somehow in this land use
Mhm.
plan. It seems to be a hot topic and
Tim has mentioned that to me. It'll be in your next. Sorry, that's wrong. You're going to get Chapter 5 next meeting, and that addresses land use compatibility. That's where that will be addressed.
and I've got that worked out to bring.
perfect. So put
I
that
didn't
on our
change
agenda.
any of it. The only thing I did was run the numbers.
Okay. Patty, do you have any public comments?
I would, as a member of the public, I commend you for agreeing to have the public meeting at this point. We have 182 year-round responses, year-round property responses. That's exceptional. We don't have that many more year-round properties, right? I mean, that's a great percentage. It might actually indicate that people will be willing to come. And I would just ask what kind of preliminary information will be given to them to look at that might encourage them to come with additional ideas. Because if you just send out a notice there's going to be a meeting without something to read, it might not encourage them to that next level, but commend you for doing that. I think it was a good idea.
Can I summarize the
Sure.
survey?
Sure. You're welcome to. There's also a summary of bullets at the end of Chapter 2 about the
Yeah.
community profile. This board can also, I believe, choose to, request that the Board of Commissioners put the draft material, which is subject to revisions, on the town's website as well. But
Do we have the final survey? I don't think we do. With all those numbers. We had the preliminary with 60 or...
I sent out to you guys a PowerPoint with all the results
The other
Okay.
day.
with the
Yeah.
with the
That's what we got the other day.
non-property owners and property owners. So you've got a host of
I was just going
material.
to summarize and say, based on the survey results,
Well, I think he
These-
has a summary in there, doesn't he?
yeah,
Okay,
I mean,
okay.
Okay.
Well, because as a commissioner, I'd be interested in seeing whatever I can legally see as soon as possible, which I have no idea what that is.
Yep.
But I'd like to see stuff as soon as possible as well, so.
When you put stuff on the website, I mean, a lot of other communities, they create a little website like Oak Island did for their land use plan. When you put that on there, do you put the revised stuff or just the
We put a
raw?
note on that says, please note, these are not final and they're subject to further review. Because obviously we already know that we've got changes that we're going to make.
So you're taking the original draft?
That's correct.
Yes.
That's correct. And there is no website created for this project. This would have to just go on the town website. So, Tim, I'll let you guys decide between you and David, and, if it's the pleasure of this board that be pursued, you all should say so at this moment, I think. Is that the pleasure of this board? Do you want to put that material up? Chapters
I don't
1,
know.
2,
I
and
don't
3?
think, I don't think we want to put the original stuff that we've made all sorts of changes to.
No,
I
Okay.
wouldn't put that up.
no.
Okay,
I have no problem with the survey summary, because that's real data that isn't going to change.
okay.
We should share that with whoever wants to see that.
Are you updating the drafts as we're doing them? You're updating the drafts as we're doing them.
That's
To
not
some
really-
degree, yes, but
You can't
You
be
can't do
responsible
that.
for,
that's right, because we will go through a whole new revision process. We do not have the budget or time to do that. So that's why, part of the reasons why.
I wouldn't put the stuff
Yeah.
that we've made all sorts of changes to up there.
Okay.
Is Heather gonna do a email to the Sunlight Committee, whatever it's called,
Sunshine.
Sunshine, on the meeting? I mean, I can do
That's up
one.
to y'all.
Well, I can do
You
it.
want me to ask
Because
her
it's an
to?
open meeting, right?
You want me to ask
I
her
mean, I
to?
can do it to HBPOA members.
It's
but
gonna
I
have
I
can't-
mean, I always give her.
It's gonna go out just like any other public notice
Yeah,
would.
yeah,
It's gonna
will.
go out in every
Yeah.
venue we can possibly send it out.
Right.
I'll take a front page.
Yeah,
ad
I give
out,
her
bunch
all
of
the.
Vicky.
Can you put an outline up at least so they have an idea of what is being discussed within the parameters of that chapter? Because if you just put the survey,
Yeah.
Who knows?
what does that mean?
I mean,
Because of his format, it will basically come from the audience as to how it goes, right?
The meeting, yes.
Yes, the meeting that there'll be.
If they come to the public, really the information that we put out there needs to be some way to draw them in.
It-
Because if you get them in here, he's going to be presenting information at that time.
Now, don't we have a couple of, we've got the original kickoff meeting PowerPoint that has information about what a land use plan is. We have a couple other things. We have these PowerPoints. I can send you a blurb, Tim, for
Yeah,
if
and
you need.
we can put some stuff
wording
together that'll
about-
give them. I was looking at the front of this. There's some information in the front that
I can
pretty much
prepare
says
a
what
flyer
we're
too.
doing. Yeah.
I mean, even what I call your outline page for chapter 1, 2, 3, it's not the detail
Yep,
behind it,
that
but
would be fine.
here are
That's
things
not gonna
that have
change.
been discussed by points that they may get into the intricacies of it, and it will prompt an interest. And that's, as you say, that's not going to change.
Right.
Now, is that what you're talking about Heather's gonna do?
It's up to what y'all decide.
Whatever Heather,
What you
I
want me
think
to
it
give
should
her?
be consistent. Whatever she puts up is what you should send out, is what goes to the Sunshine, is what goes to the paper. It should
So I'll wait on
kind of all
what you
be
get.
consistent.
Okay.
Give
Okay.
it to Tim, and Tim tell me what to give to Heather. But she gets all the agendas, they all go out.
That's the sunshine list, but then she also does an email blurb,
Yeah.
a blast. It's a different.
Oh, that's different than the sunshine.
And it could be
list.
in the
Sunshine
newsletter,
list is
right?
just
That
where
goes
the
on the
agendas go
newsletter.
to.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Don't we have
I
like a
think she's talking
Facebook
about
page
the-
or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
got a Facebook page.
Yeah,
And Twitter.
we have that too.
Twitter. Do we have a Twitter account?
Yes, we
Yep.
do.
Mm-hmm.
And a
You don't
newsletter.
tweet?
Hmm?
You don't
Yeah.
tweet?
I must not tweet with it, Tam. I got to start tweeting.
You need to follow
You have to
them?
follow them first.
All right, so I'm going to send.
Who's the tenant?
I'll provide Tim and Rhonda with a little bit of narrative about what will be discussed at the meeting.
Okay.
And then I'll also, and that'll have a couple summary bullets about
Okay.
what's going on.
Perfect.
And we'll put it on InstaFace Snap Tweet.
Okay. Anything else?
Rhonda, would you ask Heather to let me know what she's planning to send
Yes.
out so I can do it to the
Yes.
HBPOA? All right.
We'll,
I will.
We'll get something together. We'll do.
All right.
If I haven't talked to Vicky.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments or announcements?
I've got to go to a county commissioner meeting this afternoon who are going to be talking about some offshore drilling issues this afternoon. Maybe so if you're welcome to join me at
Afternoon.
Thought I'm
5:30.
gonna read your
Afternoon's over.
picketing the group.
It's almost
Tell them I
evening.
said,
Well, no,
hey.
we're having a rally and before at 5:30. So,
Tell them I said, hey.
I will tell them you said hey.
Tell them
Why?
Tell them I think they're doing a horrible job.
They know that.
Do you move to adjourn?
Yes.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
So do I.
All those
Aye.
in favor? We're adjourned.
All right.